Starting cultivation in the world of Naruto. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Where It All Began. Gradually, the sound of breathing weakened, and the heartbeat began to become clear. Bang Bang felt the blood in the body surging with the beating of the heart. As the blood vessels and pulses contracted and expanded, there was a faint feeling of numbness rising from the coccyx. This rise appeared and disappeared, and often disappeared after rising 4 or 5 sections, and then started all over again. The whole process made people upset and crazy. The ears could not hear, the heartbeat could not be felt, and the eyes could not see. The consciousness gradually sank. It seemed that even the consciousness had been depressed. I only felt that time and space were chaotic, the world was unclear, and the surroundings were gray and foggy. I wanted to find out what was going on, but I could never get close. In this chaos, there seemed to be light. At first, this light felt as big as the moon, but it was ethereal and unreal. Using consciousness to gather it would often break the concentration because of the intention. Therefore, the progress was slow. In the past 3 months, I only condensed this huagwan to the size of a soybean, but I didn't make any progress since then. Feeling the stubbornness of the light, which refused to solidify anymore, just as he was about to return to his mind and leave the state, suddenly the golden light burst out, and he felt that he was in a state of tranquility without interruption. His expression was happy, as if he was drunk and bathed, and his body was warm. For a moment, everything was silent, the bright moon was in the sky, and he felt that the earth was in a state of light. At this time, he knew that the method of returning to the light had been completed. This was obviously the enlightenment of the mind and body, and the golden light was blooming. The joy gradually subsided, and he clearly felt that it was different from the past. This mind was free to control and release, and no longer needed to regulate the breath and calm the mind as in the past. Once a thought came out, the thought could be stopped. And unlike in the past when the light was controlled by the mind, now he himself is this light, the center of this land of chaos. Is this? No. Why is the chaos around him moving? According to the Danjing, the light that just appeared should still be in the Danshin, and what's wrong with this tension? Why does it feel like it is collapsing inward? This is. Along with the return of consciousness, there was a noisy sound in the ears. The noise was so loud that it made people upset. They wanted to open their eyes to see what was happening around them, but they felt that their bodies did not listen to them. Not only could they not open their eyelids, but they also felt pain all over their bodies. Although they could not see the situation around them, they could feel that the situation was not optimistic. Soon, Bai Sui felt something touching him, and the other party used great force to press on his abdomen. The strong pain overwhelmed other feelings at this moment, and Bai Sui, who had been struggling to wake up, suddenly opened his eyes. The sudden light that broke into his vision made Bai Sui unable to really see his situation, even if he opened his eyes. Gradually, he adapted to the light that entered his eyes, and Bai Sui, whose consciousness had been in darkness, also saw the situation around him for the first time. A man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s was pressing his hands on Bai Sui's lower abdomen. It seemed that the sudden struggle of Bai Sui startled this man. However, this man just looked at Bai Sui, and then continued to focus on the movements in his hands. As the man's men continued to work, a piercing pain came again. Bai Sui looked at the location of the pain and found that the clothes on his lower abdomen were soaked with blood. The man was tearing the clothes there, and it was because of this that the wound was pulled, which made Bai Sui wake up directly. The pain and stimulation made Bai Sui cry uncontrollably, and his limbs twitched slightly weakly. The tears blurred his vision, so that Bai Sui could not see how the man treated his wounds, but he also knew that the man was treating him. With waves of pain, Bai Sui finally couldn't hold on and fainted again. This time when he was unconscious, Bai Sui felt as if he had a particularly long dream. In the dream, there was a remote village. Although the village was remote, it also had a backer and was protected by a family. This family was the Uzumaki family. The entire family had power far beyond that of ordinary people, and it was with this power that they could protect one side. However, there are pros and cons. Although the village is dependent on the protection of the Uzumaki clan, it still belongs to the territory of the Fire Country. Compared with other villages, it needs to pay more taxes as a price to buy a stable life. This opportunity to pay more tribute is what many villages want. After all, it is much better to pay voluntarily with your own choice than to be robbed and taken away by others. In this way, the village lived peacefully for decades under the protection of the Uzumaki clan. Until the Uzumaki clan joined some alliance and no longer remained neutral as before, the war spread to the village for the first time. Due to the geographical location of the village, it is relatively remote and far away from the clan land of the Uzumaki clan, and the power of protection it can receive is weak. As a result, some people with family wealth in the village packed up their belongings and fled. Thanks to the decades of recuperation in the village, many people have accumulated a lot of wealth. At first, only a few families fled, one because they could not take the fields away, and the other because it was difficult to leave their hometown. Later, the war escalated, and the sounds of several battles were heard in the village. In this way, more people were scared and migrated in the direction of the Whirlpool clan. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer people in the village, and more empty houses and fields. As a result, the actual labor force of the village decreased, and the output of resources became lower and lower, and gradually it was not enough to pay taxes. This made the village want to absorb foreign labor. One day, a young couple fled to the village and settled down again. After all, although the village might be invaded by war, it has not been invaded after all. This is a safe haven in the eyes of many displaced people. It was also because of the previous battles that the terrain around the village changed. It was originally a village by the sea and surrounded by woods. The successive battles burned most of the woods, which also made the road to the village easier. The couple was not an exception. There were dozens of refugees like them. These outsiders who had experienced war and cherished peace were particularly grateful to the village for accepting them. They never slacked off when working, and the harvest in the second year was even greater than in previous years. Excluding the part that was handed over, the villagers had a good year. Having tasted the sweetness, the village continued to recruit refugees from outside. Although the people inside had different thoughts and different human natures, every laborer brought a lot of gains to the village anyway. Blessings and disasters are hidden in the same place. The gradually prosperous village also attracted prying eyes. Chapter 2 Real Dreams. The village gradually prospered, and some villagers who originally wanted to flee gave up the idea. It's not that they didn't want to stay away from the war, but they felt that they could stay in the village for a few more years and save more money, so that even if they moved to another place in the future, they would not live a miserable life. However, facing the harvest that was getting bigger year by year, those people could not make up their minds to leave, and the wealth accumulated in the village was getting more and more. After a few years, many caravans or travelers passed by the village, and gradually spread the reputation of the village. Many people knew that there was such a village, peaceful and quiet, far away from the war, and the people in it lived a very rich life. This attracted many refugees, which was much more convenient than waiting for people to come purely by luck. So the people in the village let those people spread the word outside. Of course, there were some objections, but they could not resist the wishes of most people. So those who opposed had to pack up their belongings and leave here, and even visited many families before leaving, hoping to leave together. But those people did not listen to their advice. Instead, they saw that their assets had shrunk significantly after they left the village, so they were more and more reluctant to leave. Of course, the persuasion of these people was not without effect. There were still a few people who took it to heart. The couple mentioned earlier was one of them. However, unlike the original residents of the village, these people who fled here did not have any savings. Everything they had was earned from scratch after they came to the village. Having seen the cruelty of war, the couple really did not want to repeat the same mistakes. However, they had no savings in their hands, and seeing that the autumn harvest was imminent, they decided to pack up and leave the village after the harvest. However, things did not go as planned. This year, the Uzumaki clan officially ended and took the initiative to intervene in the war. There will be winners and losers in war, but the Uzumaki clan relied on its own strong strength. Although they fought everywhere, they almost won all the battles. Although the village did not gain any substantial benefits, they were also immersed in joy when they heard the news. After all, it is always a good thing for your protector to be strong. But the Uzumaki clan won, which naturally means that at least one clan lost, and the Kaguya clan suffered the most serious losses. Although there was an unwritten rule during the Warring States period, that is, try not to attack ordinary people. But once the war starts, who can stop? In addition, The Kaguya clan was deliberately seeking revenge. This warlike family attacked the Uzumaki clan from the sea when the grain was about to be harvested. The first to bear the brunt were areas near the sea like the village. They came by boat just for revenge, so they burned, killed and looted everywhere. Those who could be taken away directly were loaded onto the ship, and those who could not were all destroyed. Although they did not deliberately target civilians, even the aftermath of the team's fight was enough to destroy the village without any protective power. In this way, the young couple lost their home again, but fortunately they survived again. It was just different from when they fled to the village before. Now they had a son, and the journey became more bumpy. Fortunately, they had a general goal this time and headed towards the Uzumaki clan. The family of 3 walked along in this way. Although it was inconvenient to have a child, they would be more or less compassionate for the sake of their young child when seeking help on the road. In this way, the 3 people walked for more than a month with a crowd for a short journey of more than 10 days. After all, they had to avoid the impact of various wars along the way and find ways to get the food they needed. Fortunately, they finally arrived at their destination alive, but facing such a large number of refugees, the Uzumaki clan could not accept all of them, and they had to guard against possible spies among them. In order to leave a way for their children to survive, the young couple chose to entrust their children to the Uzumaki clan, and the 2 of them went to find another way to survive with other refugees who could not join. The Uzumaki clan took in a lot of children this time, and in addition to the previous victories in the war, they seized a large amount of supplies. With the support of these supplies, it is enough to train these people. So after a simple distinction and identification, these people were divided into various positions and trained in different directions. The little boy and 9 other children of the same age were assigned to a middle-aged man for management. The Uzumaki clan's land was built by the sea, and these newcomers who had not yet gained trust could only live on the periphery. The periphery was not suitable for farming, and they still relied more on obtaining food from the sea. These children helped to carry food every day, and the only difference was the amount of tasks specified according to their age. In addition to the fixed working hours, each manager who led the team still taught them literacy and common sense. As for fighting, to be honest, the Uzumaki clan still disdained the power of these civilians. In this way, they spent every day in a busy life. Although they had to work every day, fortunately, they had no worries about food and clothing. The Uzumaki clan did not have any harshness in these aspects. In this way, the little boy gradually grew up, until he was 16 years old. The Uzumaki clan and their ally the Senju clan attacked the Uchiha clan together. With a shortage of manpower, they had to draw civilians to carry supplies and act as logistics. Of course, they were not asked to die, but just to do the labor, and there were still strong men from the Uzumaki clan to escort them. Their team was not lucky. They were ambushed and killed by the enemy after only the second delivery. Seeing 3 people standing directly in the middle of the road, their ill intentions were beyond words. The leader, Lord Uzumaki, stopped the team and asked them to retreat quickly and flee in the direction they came from. They were not fools, so they turned around immediately and ran as fast and far as they could. However, since the enemy was here to kill them, they would not watch these supplies escape. Although they disdained to attack civilians, they would not have any scruples. The last voice that stayed in his ears was, "Fire style, great fireball technique." Then everything went black, and the whole dream ended there. Consciousness returned again, and Bai Sui woke up again. At this time, Bai Sui was leaning against a tree, and there was no one else around. Blinking, he gradually sorted out the situation around him. Chapter 3 Return. Bai Sui combined the inexplicable memories in his mind with the current situation, and gradually sorted himself out. He didn't know why he came to this world of Naruto, but it seemed to belong to the Warring States period before the plot. As for whether he traveled through time or reincarnated, it was unknown. After all, he didn't get any system and couldn't prove anything. His memory of his previous life was actually incomplete. It only ended when he practiced Tei Jinho Zhuangzi and only practiced to the stage of Jinho Zhatu. As for his previous life, he died directly. Bai Sui didn't believe it. After all, it was not an evil skill. Even if something went wrong, it was just yin deficiency, and there would never be such a big consequence. Bai Sui also had some doubts about this. He wondered if he was in an illusion now, just like a lucid dream, but now it was not like a dream that could be easily escaped. But feeling the pain in his abdomen and the soreness all over his body, to be honest, Bai Sui felt that if this was fake, then this was definitely the most real dream he had ever had, without any flaws. However, thinking of the many classics he had read in the past, there were indeed many cases of predecessors who lost themselves in cultivation. Considering that they had practiced for a longer time than himself, and they were all people with a firm heart of Taoism, even they could fall into it, how could he be better than them? How could he assert that he would not be confused by the illusions produced during cultivation? But even if it was really an illusion, now that he had not found any flaws, he could only live his life step by step. In this way, Bai Sui leaned against the tree, his eyes were unfocused, and he tried his best to focus his thoughts and use them to think. There was no way, as long as his consciousness returned, he would feel the pain in his body. In all his memories of his previous life, Bai Sui had never experienced any great pain. After all, he lived in a peaceful country in his previous life. Although the whole world was not peaceful, at least he had never experienced any tragic experiences in his country. He wanted to relieve his pain by taking a deep breath, but found that his breathing would pull the wounds on his body, and he was grinning in pain. But Bai Sui knew that he could never stay like this. Since he was intercepted, there was a high possibility that there would be another batch. Staying here is tantamount to handing one's fate over to others. What's worse, with Bai Sui's current state, not to mention those ninjas, even a random robber can easily deal with him. Although it was difficult, Bai Sui still checked his whole body. He originally wanted to confirm his injuries and try to avoid touching them when he left later, but he didn't expect to make an unexpected discovery. In his arms, there were two things that obviously did not belong to him. One was a piece of cloth torn from his clothes, and the other was a scroll with the word seal written on it. When he unfolded it, he saw a short message written with blood as ink. The 5th transport team was intercepted by 3 Uchiha clan members in the southern forest 15 miles southeast of Sankei village. All civilians except Bai Sui died. Because he was seriously injured and unable to move, he brought the body back. I will continue to carry supplies to the battlefield. Uzumaki Sujido book. Bai Sui looked at the scroll with the seal in his hand again, and couldn't help but feel novel. At the same time, he also knew that his current name was Bai Sui. Now I seem to have two choices. Either take this opportunity to find an uninhabited place and go deep into the mountains and old forests to see if I can escape this war. Or I honestly return to the Uzumaki clan's clan. With my work injury, I think I can rest for a while, and I can also take the opportunity to understand this world. After thinking about it, Bai Sui laughed at himself. What am I thinking about? Where can I run in my current state? What's more, Bai Sui knew that the final winners belonged to the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan. Although I don't know what year it is now and how long it will take until the end of the warring states, at least I know that I am on the winning side. Although this does not guarantee that I will survive, at least my survival rate is higher than joining other families. The only pity is that I don't have a way to practice ninjutsu. From the situation in that memory, all families will not teach outsiders how to practice, even if they are family-born children. I haven't found any golden fingers yet, and there is no system in my mind that communicates with me. It seems that I am still prepared for an ordinary life. After resting for another hour or two, I felt that I had some strength. In addition, the sun in the sky was already setting, and it was going to be dark in a while. There were all kinds of wild beasts in the wild in this era. Although I don't know why the heavy blood before didn't attract anything, Bai Sui didn't want to gamble. Just like this, he supported the tree and staggered towards the way he came. Fortunately, the previous position was not too deep. After walking for about an hour, Bai Sui came to a dirt road. If I remember correctly, Sankei village is ahead. I can rest when I get there. Unexpectedly, they walked until sunset. Fortunately, Bai Sui caught up with the afterglow of the sunset and saw the village. Several villagers who were on time and returned to the village from the fields found Bai Sui and saw the bandages on his body and his weak steps. 2 of them walked out and stood about 2 meters away from Bai Sui, asking about Bai Sui's origins. When they learned that Bai Sui was a transporter of the Uzumaki clan and was going to the Uzumaki clan's land, they had important information to report. The group helped Bai Sui to the village chief's house, and then showed the village chief the scroll with the seal in his hand and looked at the Uzumaki clan emblem on the scroll fabric. Although the village chief was not sure of Bai Sui's identity, he did not dare to offend him, so he vacated a room for Bai Sui to rest, and not only that, he also provided Bai Sui with a meal. Is this a bowl of hodgepodge, a bowl of colorful-looking sliced soup? After taking a sip, Bai Sui could recognize wheat, millet, oats, chopped radish roots, and several kinds of green vegetables that Bai Sui could not recognize, which might also be wild vegetables. The taste was a bit bitter, but at least it filled my stomach. I didn't feel it when I was on the road before, but I was hungry as soon as I smelled the rice. Although this bowl was relatively thin, it was still suitable for me as a wounded person. Chapter 4 Treatment. After a dreamless night, Bai Sui woke up early the next day. Bai Sui wanted to have a good sleep, but the bandage on his abdomen was really uncomfortable. It should be untied and replaced, on the one hand to prevent infection, and on the other hand to prevent too much pressure. But after all, he had no knowledge in this area. Once the bandage was untied and bleeding occurred, it seemed that there were no doctors in the village. In addition, the journey was not far, and it would take another 5 or 6 hours to reach the Uzumaki clan, so Bai Sui wanted to set off early today and let the Uzumaki clan help him deal with it. However, Bai Sui felt that he got up quite early, but after coming out of the house, he found that the village chief and his family had also gotten up, and breakfast was almost ready. After a simple breakfast, Bai Sui thanked the village chief and his family again, and then headed towards the Uzumaki clan. Stop! Outside the Uzumaki clan, 2 ninjas suddenly appeared from nowhere. And as soon as they appeared, they double-teamed and controlled Bai Sui in the local area. Feeling the kunai that was handed over from behind and directly pressed against his neck, Bai Sui carefully said, "I am from the 5th transport team. I was assigned to transport supplies. On the way, I was intercepted by the Uchiha clan. The adults who escorted the team killed them all and asked me to send their bodies back. The scroll and the letter are in my arms." After Bai Sui finished speaking, another Uzumaki clan member walked out of the woods beside him and nodded at the 2 of them. Seeing this, the person behind Bai Sui said, "Take it out." So Bai Sui carefully took out the scroll and the rags from his arms, holding one in each hand and stretched forward. Seeing this, the person behind Bai Sui removed the kunai that was pressed against his neck and reached out to take both items away. The 3 Uzumaki clan members unfolded the cloth and looked at the Uchiha clan emblem on it, and they also understood. They briefly read the contents of the letter and checked the seal on the scroll. After confirming that it had not been opened, they stopped. Seeing that there was no problem, 2 of them disappeared in a flash, leaving only the person behind Bai Sui. "Okay, you also know that the clan has been at war recently, so we have to check it strictly. I see that your injuries are not healed yet. Come with me and I will take you to get treated." Okay, thank you very much, sir." Bai Sui also recalled his usual state in his memory and replied to the person in front of him. Following the person in front of him, he turned around and around in the periphery of the clan land and came to a group of houses. This group of houses is the hospital of the Uzumaki clan. In the past, not many people came here. After all, the Uzumaki clan itself has strong recovery ability. Minor injuries almost don't need to be treated, and major injuries may not last until here. And the civilians don't see a doctor here. There are doctors in the periphery where they live, but those doctors are just ordinary people. Entering an empty house, a ninja who is also wearing the standard uniform of the Uzumaki clan came in front of him. He was a little surprised to see Bai Sui. After all, in his perception, Kashiwasa was just an ordinary person, without any chakra, and dressed in civilian clothes, so he thought he had walked into the wrong place. However, when he saw the tribe member who came in before him, he turned his questioning eyes to him. "Takaya, he was injured in the logistics transportation mission. I brought him here for treatment." The tribe member who led Kashiwasa also knew the other party's doubts and explained. Seeing this, the ninja named Uzumaki Takaya did not say much, but motioned Kashiwasa to sit in front of him. Asked Kashiwasa about his injuries. As a result, Bai Sui didn't know anything. "I'm not very clear about this. At that time, the Uchiha people set off a big fireball and hid us all. I only remember that my abdomen bled a lot. Lord Uzumaki Sujito bandaged me when I was unconscious, and I never removed the bandage after that." Upon learning that this was the case, Uzumaki Takaya frowned. "Okay, then you lie down here, I'll take off your bandage. It may hurt a little, you have to be patient, after all, it's been a long time." As soon as these words came out, Bai Sui's face turned pale. Now he also thought of it. Apart from anything else, at least the blood and the bandage have scabbed together. Removing the bandage is equivalent to stabbing the wound again. But this is something that must be done. After all, you can't just let the bandage grow on your body. Bai Sui gritted his teeth, lay on the bed beside him, closed his eyes, and waited for the other party to make a move. However, there was no movement on the left and right. The more he thought about it, the more panicked he became, so he opened his eyes again, wanting to see when Uzumaki Takeo would make a move. Finally, the other party prepared the things he would use next, came to Bai Sui, patted Bai Sui and signaled him to take off his clothes first and then close his eyes. So Bai Sui, who was embarrassed, quickly took off his shirt, revealing the bandage wrapped around his abdomen. Now looking at it again, the front of the bandage has been dyed red by blood, and of course it has scabbed. Thinking of the pain when the wound is open next, Bai Sui closed his eyes tightly, trying to make himself forget the pain. However, when people lose their eyesight, their sense of touch will be enhanced. The slight air sweeping across his body made him shiver, and the hair on his body stood up. Seeing that Bai Sui was already so nervous, Uzumaki Takeo did not let him wait any longer. He raised his knife and cut a bandage directly from the side. The force was just right, all the bandages were cut off, and Bai Sui was not hurt at all, but he felt a chill on his side. Then another knife was cut, and the bandage on the other side was also cut. The next step was the highlight, which was to peel off the gauze and scab. If it were an ordinary doctor, he would have carefully peeled it off bit by bit, but the one in front of him was a ninja, and a medical ninja from the Uzumaki family. He was very neat and tidy, and he tore the entire scab bandage off from Bai Sui with one move. Hsay! At that moment, a pain arose, but it was just a rise, because Uzumaki Takeo pressed his right hand on Bai Sui's wound. He did not feel the expected pain, but a wave of numbness. Curious, Bai Sui opened his eyes. He saw a green light emanating from the other party's palm, and its range just covered his wound. Seeing Bai Sui open his eyes, Uzumaki Takeo said, "You are not a ninja, and you don't have chakra. I will only help you stop the bleeding next, and the recovery from now on will still depend on you." Although he was very curious about medical ninjutsu, Bai Sui knew that all he could do at this moment was to agree. Chapter 5 Cultivation and Attempt. Oh, is that so? You are indeed a master of the Uzumaki clan. Those Uchiha people deserve to die. Today is the third day after Bai Sui's treatment. Perhaps because Bai Sui was injured for the Uzumaki clan, no work was arranged for him, just to let him recover in peace. When the villagers living around Bai Sui learned that he assisted the Uzumaki clan in the transportation mission, they were willing to listen to his previous experiences after work. In order to completely integrate into this place and search for some information he wanted to know, Bai Sui was also happy to have such an opportunity to get closer to everyone. After 2 days of indirect inquiries, Bai Sui gradually matched the memories in his mind with reality. After truly understanding this place, Bai Sui was a little disappointed. After all, this is the world of Naruto. Although it is still unknown how many years it will take for the plot to begin, this is a world with magical power. If you can only watch but cannot really experience it, there will always be regrets in your heart. But from the information learned in the past 2 days, even those who have lived outside the Uzumaki clan for several generations have never heard of anyone who can become a ninja. They even think that this is the innate strength of those family members, not acquired through training. Of course, Bai Sui's questions are very obscure, and he often uses a long tone to describe the strength of those Uzumaki clan members, thereby guiding those who come to listen to the story to express their own thoughts. In this way, even if someone hears about what Bai Sui did in the future, they will only think that he is just an ordinary villager who has a longing for the Uzumaki clan because he has seen the powerful power. A 40-year-old man in the crowd noticed that Bai Sui looked a little unhappy, but he didn't think much about it. After all, everyone knew that Bai Sui was allowed to recuperate in the house because of his injury, so he started to chase everyone away. "Okay, everyone, go away. Don't disturb Bai Sui's rest. His injury hasn't healed yet. Go, go, go." Yes, in this era, civilians who can live to 40 years old are already considered old. Everyone didn't stop when they saw the old man talking, and they all got up and left Bai Sui's house. Bai Sui and other civilians who were protected by the whirlpool naturally wouldn't say that each person would be allocated a house. Although the Uzumaki clan was quite gentle to them, they were not so generous. The house where Bai Sui lived was surrounded by wooden pillars, and then rammed earth boards were stuffed with grass to build walls, and the roof was covered with thatch. Because it was close to the sea and the wind was strong, thick wooden sticks and stones were also laid on the roof. The ground was compacted with soil, And then a fire pit was dug in the middle of the house, and some wooden boards were laid around the fire pit for sitting and sleeping. As for houses like townhouses, they are not something that common people like them can dream of. Only the nobles of various countries and the people of various ninja families are qualified to build and live in them. And even the wooden thatched house that Bai Sui lived in before was not for one person, but for 4 people. This is because the house that Bai Sui and his friends were assigned to is relatively small, and those larger ones have 8 people living together. Those roommates who originally lived with Bai Sui died in the last mission, so Bai Sui, who returned alone, has no roommates for the time being. And for some reason, no one else has been assigned here for the time being. To be honest, Bai Sui was so old in his previous life, and he lived in the same house with others when he was in school, but that was not such a state of sleeping with feet touching each other. So although Bai Sui feels that it is a bit wrong now, he is also glad that those people are no longer there. Lying on the wooden board covered with straw, Bai Sui once again confirmed that he did not have any necessary systems and gold fingers for crossing, and could not help but sigh deeply. The first 2 days were indeed due to physical reasons. Although he felt very hard under his body, he would fall asleep quickly under extreme fatigue. By now, Bai Sui had basically nourished his spirit and was no longer thirsty for sleep like the previous 2 days, so he tossed and turned on the straw and could not fall asleep. He was really tired from tossing and turning, and felt that he needed to find something to do. After all, people here work from sunrise to sunset. It was actually around 7 o'clock now, and it was a bit difficult for Bai Sui, who is used to the work and rest of the later generations, to sleep now. Bored, Bai Sui lit the firewood in the fire pit. With a flickering firelight, Bai Sui gathered the straw on the board and then sat on it. First, he raised his arms and stretched his upper body, then he put his legs together and stretched them forward, slightly pressing his knees to relax his legs. Just keep this posture, close your eyes and think, and imagine that the ki in your body flows to your feet through your mind. Gradually, Bai Sui felt that his feet began to heat up and gradually spread to his legs. The reason for doing this is to avoid leg numbness during meditation. Not only that, this period of time is also used by Bai Sui to calm his mind and eliminate his distracting thoughts. Now that the preparations are complete, Bai Sui began to meditate formally. First, he tried to cross his legs, but unfortunately, because this body had never crossed its legs before and the flexibility of his legs was a bit low, he could only cross his legs. But this is actually not a big deal. After all, it is not the physical body that is really meditating but the primordial spirit. The meditation of the physical body is just to eliminate one's own distracting thoughts as much as possible and prevent the disturbance of the conscious mind and consciousness. Bai Sui put his hands in the mudra below the navel, the left hand is below and the right hand is above, and the thumbs touch each other intentionally or unintentionally. His eyes are introverted, his eyelids are half closed, and his eyes are fixed on a small bone that is clearly visible above the bridge of the nose, which is pressed by his fingers. Then he clenched his teeth, licked his tongue on the upper palate, restrained his tongue, and focused on the sound of his ears. Adjust his nasal breathing and gradually restrain his consciousness. The sound of his nasal breathing should be small, so small that it cannot be heard. Remember not to make any sound, as making a sound will disturb your mood. Therefore, the breathing should be weak. The weaker the sound, the quieter the mind. The reason for this is that breathing is controlled by the consciousness. And if the breathing is not coordinated, it means that the consciousness is not quiet. Therefore, the best way is to breathe in and out gently, until you can't hear it with both ears. Count the number of breaths silently in your mind. If you find that you have forgotten where to count, it means that you are distracted, and you need to be alert and start counting again. The reason for these movements, half dropping eyelids and counting breaths, is that it is very easy to fall asleep in the early stage of meditation. Once you fall asleep, the soul will hide again, and once you fall asleep while sitting, you often lower your head to compress the cervical spine, which will be bad for the body for a long time. Chapter 6, Novel Discovery. Maybe it was because he had experienced it once in his previous life, or maybe he was a soul crossing and brought his spiritual realm with him. Bai Sui succeeded the first time, and his consciousness was immersed in his danshin. And he saw his own soul in the chaotic danshin. He was the first thought and the first flash of light at the beginning of this chaotic universe, the original and grand one. Feeling the light, Bai Sui seemed to see his previous life from it. It was as if his whole life and his previous life was condensed in this light, without any omission. Bai Sui tried to probe his consciousness into the light, and found that the environment around him changed immediately. He returned to the modern world again, to his room, and he was sitting cross-legged on the futon. Just when Bai Sui was surprised and thought that he had been trapped in the illusion caused by cultivation before, and finally woke up at this moment. Because of the strong emotional fluctuations, Bai Sui's situation was out of meditation, and the whole person's consciousness seemed to have entered a high-speed rotating vortex. In a trance, Bai Sui found that the light had returned to his eyes. He looked at the fire pit in front of him and felt the straw under him. Bai Sui sighed. Then, he cheered up. Although I didn't say that I could return to the modern world, I at least proved that I could practice. After all, this is a world with 130 trillion cells in the human body, which is 2 to 3 times the amount in the previous life. This is good news. Once again, he emptied his mind and tried to enter a state of tranquility again. Unfortunately, because before, Bai Sui's subconscious mind was still active, that is, the consciousness refused to sleep, so he couldn't enter a state of concentration. Bai Sui also knew that this could not be forced, so he had no choice but to extinguish the firewood, cover it with ash, and then lie down to sleep. In the next few days, Bai Sui followed a routine, telling the villagers about the power of the Whirlpool clan during the day, and meditating at night. After several attempts, Bai Sui also initially explored some uses. As long as Bai Sui sinks his consciousness into the light, he can see his life and his previous life. Of course, this life is also until he succeeds in returning to the light and sees the moment of the Yunshin. It's just that there is an additional play and playback function here, which can be rewound from the back to the front, and then paused at the place you want and then played normally. In this way, Bai Sui can be said to have a collection of books that contains all kinds of knowledge that is not known to be right or wrong, but it is a bit troublesome to read. And in this way, Bai Sui can relive the plot of Naruto. Although it is unknown how long it will be in the future, but at least it is a thought. However, when Bai Sui really went back to watch Naruto, he found that he did not really watch Naruto in its entirety, and he only watched the Chunin exam. The content after that was all skipped, mainly watching some famous scenes and fighting scenes, and the rest of the plot was supplemented by reading various fan works. At this moment, Bai Sui just wants to say one thing: if I had known this would happen, why did I do it in the first place? Now Bai Sui can be thankful that he did read a lot of books in his previous life. Because of his personality, he hardly participated in any sports activities in his previous life. He just liked to be alone. When he was alone, he liked to read books because he was bored. He read a wide range of books, such as astronomy and calendar, lathe fitter, computer application, classics of hundreds of schools, comic novels, lyrics and recipes, etc. In short, Bai Sui loves to read all kinds of books. Many times, even if he doesn't know what the knowledge in the book is, he can just look at the Chinese characters and finish the book. Now Bai Sui can be said to be no longer confused about the future, because as long as he is willing, he can search from his memory and study hard. He will always gain a skill. At least he will not starve to death. After all, craftsmen will not starve to death in famine years. Of course, this is just a reference, or a means of livelihood for himself in the future. The reason for this is that Bai Sui made another discovery when he was meditating, that is, he discovered ki. Although he could sense ki when he was meditating in his previous life, it was only the ki in his body. All he could do was to control the ki in his body to flow according to his own wishes. Now it was different. When Bai Sui was meditating, he discovered a ki that permeated the outside world. Perhaps this is the difference between the two worlds, or it could be because the previous life was indeed the end of the law. Later, Bai Sui thought about it and felt that this might be the natural energy absorbed by the sage mode in Naruto. After all, different worlds and different systems may have different names for the same thing. This discovery can be said to make Bai Sui overjoyed. After all, in his previous life, from the moment he started practicing, he knew that he had no chance to gain any extraordinary power that could be manifested. After all, there are 5 levels of immortals: heaven, earth, man, God, and ghost. In Bai Sui's previous life, although he had initially stepped into the threshold of practice, he was late in opening up and practicing late, and because there were many things in his daily diet that stimulated his development, he had already lost his primordial yang when he really practiced. In addition, in his previous life, he didn't know whether it was because he was stupid or there was no manifestation of ki in the outside world. In short, Bai Sui never felt it, let alone seeing it directly like now. Therefore, In his previous life, Bai Sui was very purposeful and specialized in the way of ghost immortals. After all, although ghost immortals are not pure yang immortals, they are essentially pure ghosts. But they are also transcendent in the yin, with unknown gods, no surnames in the ghost gates, and no names in the three mountains. Although they have nowhere to go and it is difficult to return to Penglai Yingdao in the end, they are not in reincarnation. They can be reincarnated or possessed, which can be regarded as another kind of life. Even Bai Sui suspected that he might have become a ghost immortal in his previous life. Although he ended up with a withered body and a dead heart, he also kept his consciousness inward and was determined. The current self is the result of reincarnation or possession, and the reason why his memory is missing is also due to the secret in the fetus. And the reason why his soul can fully replay the memory of his previous life is also likely to be the unique ability of ghost immortals. After all, he did not have such an ability in his previous life, nor did he see such an ability in the book. In this life, with the existence of Ki, he can not only take the path of human immortals first and lay a foundation for himself, but also have the possibility of glimpsing the wonders of earth immortals later. Bai Sui is not greedy. He does not desire to become a god or a celestial being. After all, being an earthly immortal can live forever and not die in this world. Chapter 7: The Beginning of Practice. In this way, Bai Sui already knew the path he would take in the future. Moreover, this body also has advantages that he did not have in his previous life. Girls start sexual development at the age of 7 and boys at the age of 8. When they reach the even number, they are mature, that is, girls reach the uterus at the age of 14 and boys lose their semen at the age of 16. This is the standard situation summarized by the ancients in the previous life. If there is a difference between the two, it means precocious puberty or developmental delay. In this life, Bai Sui did not know whether it was due to malnutrition in his early years that caused developmental delay, or because of the differences between human bodies. In short, Bai Sui's Yuan Yang had not been released at this time. This is a good thing for Bai Sui. After all, although he felt the Ki from the outside world, he could not directly take it into his body. On the one hand, it was stipulated in the original method, and on the other hand, it was a lesson learned from the previous experience in Naruto. Don't you see, if you want to use the natural energy in Naruto, you have to combine the natural energy with your own physical energy and spiritual energy, and fuse them in a one manner before you can really use it. Once the proportions are not well controlled, the stone statues standing in the three holy places are the best examples. Even if you say that it is because the immortal arts mastered by the three immortals are not suitable for humans, there is also a Chongwu, who can absorb natural energy by nature. What is the result? He will be violent immediately after absorbing it. These must be prevented. So the most important thing for Bai Sui now is to practice according to the contents recorded in the Lingbao Bifa. To be honest, in the previous life, because he knew that there was no hope of immortality, he really didn't practice life. After all, what he pursued at that time was the way of ghost immortals. Now it can be said that it is starting from scratch, and there is no experience reference. The difficulty is not small. In addition, Bai Sui also found during the 2 days of internal vision that the bodies of these two lives are indeed different, and the locations of meridians and acupuncture points are slightly different from those in the previous life. It can be said that this has increased the difficulty. He can only use the methods of the previous life as a reference, and cannot use them directly. Although the top-level intention is unchanged and the top-level ideas are common, the sand and stone of the foundation are different. Fortunately, people in the Naruto world also have internal organs, 2 eyes and 1 mouth. With this foundation, they can at least fit into the big framework. After all, Lingbao Bifa is relatively more focused on meaning rather than form, and mainly uses the connection between organs, rather than focusing on the operation between acupoints. However, when this method was first established, it still paid more attention to the interaction between heaven and earth, and the practice was in line with the season. The key is that Bai Sui now seriously doubts that the season in this world is also different from that in the previous life. The first point is that Bai Sui did not see the Big Dipper at night, and the stars in the sky are also completely different from those seen in the previous life. Moreover, planets such as Mercury, Venus, and Mars were not seen, indicating that this planet is indeed not the isotope of the Earth. In addition, the moon is also condensed by the 6 paths sage. All of the above are factors that will interfere with the operation of the planet. With so many variables, the probability that the seasons of the two are still the same is too low. So, In the next few days, Bai Sui did not immediately devote himself to cultivation, but was concentrating on recuperation. Now, when Bai Sui is doing daily activities, he will no longer affect the injured part. Although he has not done any strenuous exercise for testing, it seems that the problem is not serious. At night, Bai Sui gradually tries to use meditation instead of sleep. Combined with the physical condition seen by the inner vision, it is verified with the meridian acupoints in memory. Is it possible that there are more body cells in the heart? The physical energy produced is more abundant? After Bai Sui's exploration, he found that the effects produced by those acupoints and meridians are better than those in the previous life, but the positions have changed. In addition, after all, they are people from two worlds. Some acupoints in the previous life do not exist here, and there are some acupoints in this life that have not been recorded in the previous life. Since he does not know how to use them specifically, Bai Sui is not good at trying them directly. Apart from other things, with this discovery, Bai Sui can directly become a doctor. Even if the prescriptions of the previous life cannot be used because of the different properties of various medicinal stones, Bai Sui can be an acupuncturist with these acupoints. Although Bai Sui did not find the figure of mugwort in the memory of this body, it made it impossible to assist and supplement the acupuncture method through moxibustion. But with this half-baked knowledge and technique, Bai Sui is confident that he can be better than those doctors who treat civilians. With this medical skill, Bai Sui can get rid of the complicated physical work and free up more time and opportunities for himself to practice. Of course, it is not so easy to become an acupuncturist. One is that the source of knowledge is difficult to explain, and the other is that you don't have the right tools in your hands. Bai Sui's life experience in this life is very clear. Since he was a child of a few years old, he has always been under the protection of the Uzumaki clan and has no chance to learn such medical skills. If you want to be an acupuncturist, you can't do without needles. It's best to use filiform needles, even if they are not so thin, small sewing needles will do. It's just that after the sewing needles are polished, Bai Sui is afraid that their hardness is not enough. If they break in the flesh, it will be troublesome. Of course, the smelting technology in this world is still very advanced, and there is no need to worry too much about material science. After all, there are magical substances such as chakra metal. The only problem now is why Bai Sui didn't make such needles, so the problem comes to the first one again. This is not unsolvable, that is, leaving the Uzumaki clan. In such a war-torn era, Bai Sui did not think that people outside the Uzumaki would know his information. As long as he gave himself a chance, he could start his life as a doctor. Now all Bai Sui has to do is to make himself stronger and have the strength to protect himself. As for the opportunity to leave the Uzumaki, Bai Sui is not too worried. After all, it is the Warring States period. Future wars will not stop easily, and although the Uzumaki clan is strong, his opponent Uchiha is also not to be underestimated. It is one of the two major families that will eventually end an era. Going to war with such a family will inevitably put pressure on the Uzumaki clan in the future. At that time, whether it is to take advantage of the lack of manpower in the clan to escape, or to wait to leave when going on an outbound mission, there will be opportunities. Then Bai Sui just needs to strengthen himself now. After all, whether it is to escape from under the eyes of the Uzumaki or to leave the war zone, it requires strong strength. No one has arranged a job for Bai Sui yet, and this period of time is the best opportunity. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Getting to Work. Laojian said, those who refine the great elixir should be diligent and practice hard to purify themselves. In a secluded and mysterious cave in the deep mountains, away from chickens and dogs, they can distinguish right from wrong, not see external objects, not listen to external voices, and keep their hearts inward without any effort to seek outside. However, there are 10 demons and 9 difficulties for those who practice Taoism, which make people have feelings for the environment and lose their will. The 9 difficulties are: the first difficulty is the pressure of food and clothing, the second difficulty is the invitation of elders, the third difficulty is the entanglement of love, the fourth difficulty is the entanglement of fame and wealth, The fifth difficulty is the occurrence of disasters. The sixth difficulty is the restriction of blind teachers. The seventh difficulty is the discussion of differences. The eighth difficulty is the slackness of will. And the ninth difficulty is the wasting of time. The 10 demons are, the sixth Eve's demon, the rich demon, the noble demon, the six emotions demon, the love demon, the trouble demon, the saint demon, the sword demon, the female music demon, and the female sex demon. Bai Sui can be said to be mindful of this, and only seek the great way with one heart, and hope to achieve immortality and be among the immortals as soon as possible. So he reduced his contact with people during the day on the grounds that he needed to recuperate. He did not leave the house. Every morning, as soon as it got light, facing the rising sun, Bai Sui would practice the 8-part Vajra Kung Fu in the house. The reason for this choice was as mentioned before. The human meridians in this world are different from those in the previous life, so the 8-part brocade that regulates the meridians according to the meridian flow is not the first choice. The Vajra Kung Fu is based on the order of the internal organs, first regulating the innate kidneys, followed by the acquired spleen, and then the liver, lungs, and heart in turn, in the order of the innate 5 elements in reverse, returning to the original state. Bai Sui knew that it was time for him to lay the foundation, so he did not rush into it. He just strengthened his body and mind first, ate and drank as he should, and explored the meridians and acupuncture points through introspection in his spare time. Then he judged the seasonal changes in the outside world through his own actual observation. Combining memory and observation, this world does have 4 seasons, at least in the territory of the Land of Fire. However, when Bai Sui applied the 24 solar terms, he found that it did not match. If Bai Sui wanted to use the 24 solar terms, he had to observe for at least a few decades before he could come up with a solar term table that matched this world, but Bai Sui felt that he might not have the leisure to do so. He rested for more than 10 days. Perhaps the superiors thought that it was time for Bai Sui to recover after this period of rest, so they assigned Bai Sui a job again. Unlike the previous work of transporting goods at a fishing port, this time Bai Sui was assigned to teach children to read and learn. In the past, such work was done by people from the Uzumaki clan. Was it because he had performed well during this period of time and was considered trustworthy by the Uzumaki clan? Or was it because of the war that the manpower was so scarce? But in any case, this was a good thing for Bai Sui. After all, he didn't have to spend most of his available time on transportation, so he could have a lot of free time left. Although Bai Sui's sleep time was shortened again and again due to visualization, which made him have a few more hours of available time at night than ordinary people, the more time he could allocate freely, the better. So, Bai Sui began to recall how the Uzumaki people taught in his memory. Now that he thought about it, their methods were too crude, but there was no other way. Those people were not professional, and because of the war, the personnel were frequently rotated, and they had no experience, so they often acted as hands-off managers. And the civilian children who were learning below did not dare to tell the Uzumaki people directly, even if they did not understand or had doubts. As a result, the teaching level in the past was extremely poor, and the teachers were distressed and the students were confused. As a result, many civilians may only know a few common characters besides their own names. Bai Sui was because he was enlightened by his parents when he was a child, so it was much easier to learn with the foundation. It was also because of this that he had performed well since he was a child, and he was selected to transport supplies with a team before. I don't know whether to say it's lucky or unfortunate. Just like this, I recalled the teaching methods in my memory, and then looked at the teaching materials sent to me. There were only a few hundred common words in it, written in hiragana and katakana respectively, and the rest was up to the teacher to play freely. Bai Sui didn't want to attract attention, so he didn't make any changes on his own initiative. He just prepared the lesson and prepared to teach tomorrow. The next morning, after finishing his training and eating breakfast, Bai Sui waited at the door of the house, waiting for the people of the Uzumaki clan to make arrangements. Soon, Bai Sui saw an adult with 8 or 9 children walking here, and Bai Sui hurried forward to meet them. The adult in the lead was wearing a black Japanese casual dress with the Uzumaki clan's emblem on it, obviously a member of the Uzumaki clan. The children around him were big and small. The youngest was about 5 years old and the oldest looked less than 10 years old. "You are here, sir." Bai Sui hurriedly stepped forward to salute the Uzumaki clan. The man seemed to have a lot of things to do, and his face showed fatigue. "These children are handed over to you. You will collect and distribute their food, and you will also distribute their accommodation. If there are vacant houses around, they can be used directly. If you need to build another one, you can gather the people there to do it." He pointed to a place behind him. Bai Sui nodded quickly, indicating that he had memorized everything, and waved his hand, indicating that the children should come to him. Seeing that the children had come to Bai Sui's side, the man continued, "All the children have to go to the fishing port to work every day. I think you know this, so I won't say more. You can arrange the rest. If you have any questions, you can report to your superiors." "Okay, I'll leave first." This person also did what he said. He left as soon as he said he would leave. He was gone in a trance. Looking down at these children, Bai Sui also sighed. They are all miserable people. Looking at the little boys inside. It's good that there is no need to worry about the allocation of accommodation. "Come on, let's go into the house first." He took the children into the house where he lived and asked everyone to sit down. "Have you all eaten?" Looking at the little faces, Bai Sui felt that he needed to say something. Not yet a slightly older child spoke. Bai Sui stood up, opened the window, and lit the firewood in the fire pit. "Okay, then you sit here, I'll prepare some food for you first." Bai Sui set up a pot and stewed a pot of food, and asked everyone about their situation during this period. As the meal was over, everyone gradually got to know each other. In the next few days, Bai Sui immersed himself in the identity of the principal of the kindergarten. Although this job is relatively fragmented, it is not tiring but laborious. But those children are very sensible, and they try not to bother Bai Sui as much as possible. However, the more sensible they are, the more distressed Bai Sui is. Chapter 9, The Path to Immortality. Time flies, and Bai Sui is very fulfilled every day. To be honest, Bai Sui is actually very satisfied with the situation in this life. Except for the fact that he often misses his relatives in the previous life, he is not very sentimental about other things. Although the technology in the previous life was very advanced, Bai Sui actually doesn't like it in comparison. After all, the previous life was too busy. Unless he leaves the society, he can't really give up all kinds of negotiations. There is really too little time that belongs to oneself in a day. After all, humans are social animals. If you want to communicate with others, you can't lag behind in information. The previous life was an era of information explosion. There are too many kinds of information every day. In order to maintain social relationships, you have to squeeze out some of your own insufficient time to understand what is happening in the world. Although the Naruto world is extremely backward at this time in terms of material, from a spiritual perspective, Bai Sui feels extremely fulfilled every day. There is no excessive mental loss, no need to stay up late, and you can live according to your own plan every day, which is very nourishing. As for food, although it is not good, it is enough to fill you up. Although the clothes are made of coarse cloth and are very hard on the skin, Bai Sui himself does not pursue this. And the wooden bed, after sleeping for a while, he has barely adapted to it. In addition, now Bai Sui gradually replaces sleeping with meditation, so it has little impact. Now the only place that makes Bai Sui feel painful is going to the toilet. In any case, Bai Sui is not used to cleaning with leaves or wooden boards. Not only is it uncomfortable, but it is also not clean. Bai Sui has no good solution for this, and can only hope for his own cultivation. After all, when he cultivates into human immortal, he can already achieve no feces in his intestines, so Bai Sui's motivation for cultivation will be more sufficient. In the blink of an eye, 3 months have passed. The weather has also turned into winter. Perhaps it is due to climate reasons or other reasons. After entering winter, the war gradually subsided. This short-lived peace has filled the entire tribe with a relaxed atmosphere, and even Bai Sui and other civilians living on the periphery have felt it. That night, Bai Sui continued his practice as usual. He was in a state of silence, and his expression was happy, as if he was drunk and bathing. This was the state of yang and harmony throughout the body, and the golden flower was just emerging. Then, all sounds were silent, and the bright moon was in the sky. I felt that the earth was all bright. This was the state of enlightenment of the mind, and the golden flower was just blooming. Then, the whole body was full, and I was not afraid of wind and frost. When people are bored, I am more energetic when I encounter them. Gold builds a house, white jade is a platform, and the rotten things in the world, I breathe them into life with my true ki, red blood becomes milk, and the 7-foot flesh is nothing but gold and treasure. This is the great condensation of the golden flower. In the dark, I only felt that I had some feelings. When I sat down, my spirit entered the valley, and I could hear people talking as if they were a mile away, and I could understand everything. And the voices were all like echoes in the valley. And I heard them all, but I never heard them. This was the spirit in the valley, and I could verify it at any time. In one case, in the state of stillness, the eyes are full of whiteness, as if in the clouds. When you open your eyes to look for your body, you cannot find it. This is the whiteness of the empty room, the inside and outside are bright, and the auspiciousness is endless. In another case, in the state of stillness, the body is tangled, like cotton and jade. If you cannot stay in the sitting position, it will float up. This is the return of the spirit to the top of the head. After a long time, you can stand up. These three are naturally manifested when the gold nature is condensed. However, Bai Sui also felt that this is not all, but more specific ones need to be explored one by one. Feeling the warmth of the yang around him, Bai Sui decided to take advantage of this time of Guangdacheng to directly start matching yin and yang and walk towards the path of human immortal. This Jinhu has been completed, and for his own primordial consciousness, it is really up and down as he wants. Looking inward at his own body, guiding it with consciousness, the true water in the kidneys ripples, and the true ki gradually rises. It must be said that in the past 3 months, Bai Sui has been practicing dynamic and static exercises every day. At this moment, his body is flexible and his organs are strong. This guidance is also very smooth. He guided the ki to slowly circle in the kidneys, accumulating them, and waited until the daylight came. Looking inside, he saw that a clear spring had already accumulated in his kidneys. Bai Sui came to his senses and saw that the sky was already bright, so he swallowed a mouthful of saliva, rubbed his head and face 20 or 30 times, and exhaled the foul air that had been accumulating all night. After stretching and relaxing his muscles and bones, Bai Sui began to prepare breakfast. Those children went to the fishing port to help during the day, and came to Bai Sui in the afternoon to learn literacy and common sense. Because Bai Sui himself had plans to leave the Uzumaki clan, although he was very good to these children, he also deliberately distanced himself from them. First, he was afraid that he would not be able to bear it when he left, and second, he was afraid that all the omissions would implicate them. As for the kindness of the Uzumaki clan in raising Bai Sui would not forget it. Although he could not do anything for the time being, the future was still long, and when he had the ability to protect himself, he would repay the Uzumaki clan. Not only that, Bai Sui is also going to look for his parents in the future. No matter what, it is difficult to repay their kindness. If there are any blood relatives, Bai Sui will do his best to help. Prepare the food for lunch in advance. The sun is approaching the sky. Under introspection, the kidney ki rises naturally, just like water boiling and ki rising. The kidney ki rises slowly and goes straight into the heart. At this time, swallow the saliva in your mouth, and then the heart fluid goes to the kidney, connecting with the kidney water, and naturally the heart fluid and kidney ki combine, so that Tai Chi produces fluid. With true ki loving fluid, true water loving ki, fluid and true water are originally combined, so there is true ki in the liquid and true water in the ki. Mutually intertwined, dependent on each other. It is called crossing dragon and tiger. After swallowing the air and twitching the external kidney, the three fires gather into one to warm the lower field. If there is no liquid, the ki gathers to produce liquid, and if there is liquid, the liquid is refined to produce ki, which is called gathering fire. At this point, Bai Sui's danshin really had ki, which was the source of all Bai Sui's future cultivation, whether it was for beads, mercury, sand, or the golden elixir, it would all start from this moment. Although there was progress in cultivation, Bai Sui did not show anything on his face. On the one hand, his current cultivation was not enough, and on the other hand, if he was discovered by the Whirlpool clan now, he would not even have the chance to resist. After all, there was really no way to explain his origins. Bai Sui continued to cook for the children, and in the following days, he taught and looked after the children while practicing secretly. The ki in the danshin accumulated more and more, and he practiced like this for 3 years. During these 3 years, the gas and liquid in the danshin kept transforming, and Bai Sui would refine it every day, and finally condensed it down to the size of a grain of rice in the danshin. Although it was very small, it was extraordinary. Every time it sank and rotated in the danshin, it would absorb the surrounding true ki to strengthen itself. In other words, From this moment on, as long as Bai Sui was healthy and strong, he would become stronger every moment. I will not write the specific cultivation process and methods in this book. If you want to read it, you can read my other book. The first 10 chapters have detailed content. Chapter 10, How to Protect Yourself. The moment Bai Sui condensed this stanza, he felt some changes in himself. First of all, the key between heaven and earth became more active, and wanted to actively flow into Bai Sui's danshin every moment, but Bai Sui had never done so because of his concerns. Secondly, Bai Sui can use the power of the Yuanshin to a certain extent, such as being able to sense the good and evil of the people around him, and being able to sense the energy of others to a certain extent. If you want to say, Kagura's heart eye is similar to it. The reason why it is similar is that not only that, when Bai Sui meditates every day, his inner vision sometimes gives a foreshadowing of the future, such as, when he entered into meditation the day before, he suddenly saw a strange face, and the next day this person came to Bai Sui, etc. Bai Sui's spirit is now extremely condensed. Although he has not tried it, he feels that ordinary illusions should not work on him. And his affinity for various animals and plants has been strengthened. Although it has not yet reached the point where he can communicate directly with them, it is still far beyond ordinary people. There were also significant changes in his body. His muscles were not knotted, but flexible and firm. His ears and eyes were sharp, his appetite increased sharply, and his digestive ability was greatly enhanced. It can be said that he was one step closer to the goal of not having to excrete. Since he already had the ability to perceive, Bai Sui naturally tried it privately. According to Bai Sui's perception, the energy level in his body was no worse than that of the Uzumaki clan, who was responsible for managing this area. You should know that the Uzumaki clan is famous in the ninja world for its chakra and sealing techniques. Although I don't know whether that person belongs to the level of Jinin, Chunin, or Shinan, I think Bai Sui's energy reserve is not low. Of course, this does not mean that Bai Sui has the power to protect himself. After all, he has no means of using ki now. It is equivalent to having bullets but no guns. If you really fight with others, you can use those bullets as hammers to hit ordinary people. But to deal with a ninja, it would be like fighting a man holding a machine gun with a meteor hammer, not to mention that the opponent could be a famous family with rich heritage like Uzumaki. So the most important thing for Kashiwa Sui now is to find some means to use energy. First of all, his ki is indeed different from chakra, although both are composed of physical energy and spiritual energy. Chakra is basically produced by the combination of spiritual energy and physical energy in a 1:1 ratio, and it is used as it is produced, and basically not stored. It feels to Kashiwa Sui like copper wire and tin wire are entangled. Kashiwa Sui's ki is to refine physical energy through spiritual energy, and condense spiritual energy with physical energy, and finally the two are fused, just like combining copper water with tin water to make an alloy. Both have advantages. Due to its characteristics, chakra has a fast refining speed, and basically you can restore chakra to full after resting for about half a day. As for ki, at least for Kashiwa Sui at present, it is extremely difficult to refine. You use a little less. Although it is being refined every moment, it will take at least a few days for Kashiwa Sui's current ki to be full. Of course, the amount of chakra is basically fixed. After a person reaches adulthood, it basically won't grow anymore, which means that a person's achievements are fixed by nature. As for ki, because there are a series of training methods later, it can be expanded and condensed. Basically, as long as you are alive, it will be strengthened every moment, which belongs to the late-stage players. In terms of control, through Kashiwa Sui's secret observation in the past few years, he was fortunate to see the release of several ninjutsu, and found that there seemed to be natural energy involved. After Kashiwa Sui's secret analysis, mainly guesswork, the reason why they can release ninjutsu and change its attributes is probably because the 50% of spiritual energy in the chakra has attracted the natural energy between heaven and earth, and then the 50% of physical energy is used for control. Through the memory of the previous life, there are still several ninjutsu explained in detail in Naruto, but no matter how to experiment, Kashiwa Sui found that his ki cannot directly release ninjutsu. Bai Sui felt that there must be some reasons that he didn't understand, but he didn't think he had the ability to solve it. After all, this was the difference between the two worlds, and he wasn't some genius who could simply smooth out the differences between the two world systems, or even the two worlds. So what Bai Sui could do now was to develop ways to use ki. If you have any records of this in your previous life, then you must have said that there were, but Bai Sui was only interested in ghosts and immortals in his previous life, so he didn't collect or study this information at all. Bai Sui can only try it based on some theories from his previous life, but fortunately he still had some understanding of this in his previous life. Huangdi Nijing Su Wen states that there are 5 ways of operating qi, namely absorption, release, accumulation, transmission, and storage. Absorbing qi, the corresponding property is growth, which is within the 5 elements, and the corresponding function is bending and straight. Releasing qi, the corresponding property is discrete, which is fire in the 5 elements, and the corresponding function is flaming up and straight. Gathering qi, the corresponding property is condensation, which is gold in the 5 elements, and the corresponding function is from reform. Transmitting qi, the corresponding property is self-cooling, which is water in the 5 elements, and the corresponding function is moistening. Storing qi, the corresponding property is nourishment, which is earth in the 5 elements, and the corresponding function is farming. The 5 internal organs corresponding to wood, fire, earth, gold and water are liver, heart, spleen, lungs and kidneys. After trying one by one, and some references from the previous life, Bai Sui finally made a qi sword. Keeping a breath in the lungs, the power of this qi becomes stronger and stronger with the passage of time. After trying, without nourishing at all, directly inhaling and exhaling, the power is like a 1-year-old child punching, and it can also cause damage if it hits the eyes and other places. If it is nurtured for 1 month, it can penetrate several feet into the stone, and it may be able to directly penetrate the earth escape and earth flow wall. The power is very good, but the problem is that it is disposable and cannot be reused. It needs to be nurtured again for the next use. After Bai Sui's attempt. With Bai Sui's current ability, he can store up to 3 breaths at a time, that is, he can release the qi sword up to 3 times. As for the power, it depends on how long it is nurtured. At the same time, Bai Sui also remembered that in the previous life, the knights were divided into 9 levels. If he could refine the qi sword, he might be able to become a qi hero. Luo Gong said, there are 9 different levels of immortal heroes. The first is the heavenly hero, the second is the immortal hero, the third is the spirit hero, the fourth is the wind hero, the fifth is the water hero, the sixth is the fire hero, the seventh is the qi hero, the eighth is the ghost hero, and the ninth is the sword hero. The first heavenly hero, this celestial being was gifted a sword by God. The second immortal hero, he had already cultivated a path to ascend to heaven, and further refined his qi into a cone-shaped sword. The third spirit hero, he was already an earthly immortal, living in the mountains, and had refined the sword and dagger. When he heard of any injustice from thousands of miles away, his flying sword would immediately arrive, so he was called a spirit hero. The fourth wind hero, he was also an earthly immortal, who had refined the sword and dagger, but his cultivation was interrupted, so he had not yet reached the highest level of spirituality. When he knew something was wrong, he would find his body and sword at the same time in a ventilated place. The fifth water hero, he was originally a water immortal, so he was called the water hero, because without water he could not fly. The sixth fire hero, he cultivated his own self-immolation, so he was also called the samadhi of fire and light. When he refined the dagger and sword, he realized that he wanted to fly, so he had to turn himself into a ball of fire and ride on it to travel, so he was called the fire hero. The seventh qi hero, he only needed to learn to calm his breath, and then he would refine the essence into a sword. The sword would be light qi, and he could travel with it, so he was called the qi sword. The eighth ghost hero, people cannot see his form, he originally cultivated the ink and water form of an immortal, so he is also an ink and water sword, which goes in and out and is no different from qi. The ninth encounter with a swordsman, or encountering a precious sword, or transforming anything into something. Chapter 11 Preparation. Since the beginning of winter, the war has been extinguished, and many families in the land of fire have not made any rash moves. This calm did not last long. As soon as spring passed, Uzumaki was once again involved in the war. To be honest, Bai Sui was very puzzled by the wars between many families. There seemed to be no hatred between them, nor any necessary conflicts of interest. What exactly caused the conflict? Especially this time when the war started, Bai Sui knew that just a few days before Uzumaki joined the war, he had been transporting supplies to the clan land. Where did these supplies come from? Moreover, the logo on the clothes of these people who transported supplies was 3 balls of fire. This logo looked very familiar to Bai Sui, but he couldn't remember it for a while. When reviewing the Hokage at night, he found such a pattern on the wall behind the daimyo of the Land of Fire. With this discovery, he dug deep into the memory of this body and found that he had seen the logo of the daimyo of the Land of Water when he was young. There was a big water drop in the middle and a small water drop on each side. Does this mean that the wars among the races were caused by these world nobles, the actual rulers of various countries? The Uzumaki clan was the only one among all the ninja clans to establish a country, and it was also the only one that was inexplicably destroyed. Moreover, when the country was destroyed, his most loyal ally, the Senju clan, did not make any actual statement. If it was said that there was no intervention from the Fire Country, Kashiwasu would not believe it. Not only that, but even the Senju clan disappeared inexplicably afterwards. To be honest, there are many things that cannot be explained based on the few words in Naruto. Kashiwasu had no evidence and could only let it go. This mood of watching the show did not last long for Kashiwasu, because someone from above assigned him a task. Just like the previous time, the specific time was unknown, and he was just asked to wait at home, waiting to be taken away directly when needed. Although Kashiwasu had been looking forward to such an opportunity for a long time, when it really came, Kashiwasu was still very nervous. He calmed down his heart by entering into a state of tranquility, and then reviewed his plan in the inner scene. Yes, Kashiwasu also made a plan. Although the plan was very rough due to the lack of intelligence, this was the limit of what Kashiwasu could do. The first thing is to prepare personal belongings. During this period, Bai Sui asked for a lot of needles and threads under the guise of helping children repair clothes, and the target was the needles. Although these sewing needles are relatively thick, they are much thinner than the 9 needles of the Yellow Emperor. After all, the current level of metal smelting is much better than that of the ancient world. As for weapons, Bai Sui did not prepare them. After all, he was just an assistant in the ninja mission and would not participate in the battle. Although he would inevitably be affected, it was not allowed for civilians to carry weapons. And Bai Sui himself was not sure that he could hide the ninja's detection, especially the Uzumaki clan with Kagura's heart, who had a strong perception of good and evil. As the saying goes, if you carry a sharp weapon, you will kill yourself. If you carry a weapon, you will inevitably have emotional fluctuations due to some unexpected situation. Once there is a conflict with a ninja of the Uzumaki clan, that is what Bai Sui is most reluctant to see. After all, although Bai Sui has 3 key swords in his heart, there are only these 3. They are the last life-saving talisman of Bai Sui in this dangerous world. It is better not to use them if you can. And Bai Sui does not know whether the families in this world have other ninjutsu besides their own secret techniques, just like the 3-body technique known as the foundation of ninja. Among them, the substitute technique can be regarded as a magical skill to escape. If the current ninjas also have such ninjutsu, then Bai Sui can only rely on the first attack by surprise, and then it is very likely that he will be used to avoid it. The last and most important point is that Bai Sui always remembers the care given to him by the Uzumaki clan. No matter what purpose they have in doing this, it is Bai Sui who will benefit in the end, which makes Bai Sui unwilling to be an enemy of the Uzumaki clan. Under this premise, if Bai Sui takes the initiative to hurt the Uzumaki clan because of his own selfish desires, then Bai Sui will be even more unwilling. After all, people always have to have a bottom line in their lives. No matter how entangled Bai Sui is in his heart, what is coming will always come. That night, a member of the Uzumaki tribe came straight to Bai Sui's house. This action awakened Bai Sui, who was immersed in the glory of his own spirit, and immediately pretended to be asleep. Bai Sui, get up quickly, put on your clothes and get ready to go. The Uzumaki tribe member did not enter the house, but stood outside the house and said to the inside. Hearing such a voice, Bai Sui was startled, but he also responded quickly, "Okay, sir, I will get dressed now." The clothes of civilians were designed to facilitate labor, and they were naturally very simple to wear. At this moment, he put on his clothes and put on open-toed shoes in a few seconds. Bai Sui really felt uncomfortable about this, because for some reason, all kinds of open-toed shoes are popular in this world. Whether it is ninjas, samurai, civilians or nobles, the shoes they wear are all open-toed. The only difference is the material, style, and amount of exposure of the shoes. For people like Bai Sui, it is really awkward. Bai Sui has always felt strange when exposing any part of his body except his head and forearms since he was a child. You have to know that in the previous life, Bai Sui had to wear clothes even when swimming in the sea, Otherwise he felt like he was running naked, and this mentality has not been eliminated even now. So Bai Sui is very awkward every time he wears shoes now. In the previous life, except for wearing sandals barefoot when he was a child, he had to wear socks even when wearing sandals after that. In this world now, there are no socks at all, only various stockings and fishnet stockings. I don't know what kind of development curve can create this result. I thought a lot, but Bai Sui's actions did not stop. He hurriedly put on his clothes all the way, rushed out of the house, and saluted the visitor. In fact, Bai Sui now wants to know how the other party knows that he is not asleep. Did he see or sense that he was meditating before? But if that is the case, he should not be so calm now. However, the other party has no obligation to explain. And Bai Sui will not ask without knowing the tact. Follow me, get ready to go. The man saw Bai Sui coming out, and didn't say much, just led Bai Sui to the periphery. Bai Sui followed closely behind, calmed his mind, and restrained his gaze and thoughts, looking at the person in front of him with lifeless eyes. Chapter 12 Departure. The reason why ordinary people cannot live to the end of their lifespan is because their spirit is wasted. The key points of mental depletion are talking and watching. Keeping your mouth shut and putting your tongue against your upper teeth can slow down the mental depletion to a certain extent, and the same is true for your eyes. The old saying close your eyes and rest your spirit is just this reason. People's spirit will overflow from their eyes. It is precisely because of this overflow that some masters can sense that they are being watched. Bai Sui gathered his mind and gathered the scattered spirit through his soul, putting himself in a state where the inner scene does not go out and the outer scene does not come in. In this state, Bai Sui does not have to worry about his gaze attracting the attention of others. Especially the ninja in front of him who is dealing with spiritual energy, Bai Sui should be more cautious. The manifestation of this is that from the outside, Bai Sui's eyes are dull and dark, and he does not look very smart. Regardless of those unimportant things, focus on the person in front of him. After some observation, it was found that the clothes of the person in front of him were quite damaged. I don't know if it was due to limited funds or the war was so urgent that there was no time to change clothes. To be honest, Bai Sui didn't want it to be any of the two reasons. He hoped that the person in front of him was too sloppy and unwilling to change. After all, no matter which option was chosen, it meant that the Uzumaki clan was in a bad situation now. Although he was participating in a low-risk transportation mission, it was also risky. If the war was too unfavorable, even if Bai Sui successfully escaped from the Uzumaki clan's territory, it would not be easy to leave the war zone safely. Not only that, Bai Sui noticed that the person in front of him was not very old. He looked like he was only 10 years old, but considering that he could become a Genin at the age of 11 or 12 in the plot, he didn't seem to be young. Silently following his footsteps, he came to a snow storage area. He could see 5 people standing in the field. Except for one who was dressed in Uzumaki uniform, the other 4 were civilians. They seemed to be arranged to transport supplies like Bai Sui. The 2 Uzumaki tribe members looked at each other, and then turned to the civilians present and said, "Very good, everyone is here. Some of you have participated before, and some are participating for the first time, but it doesn't matter, just follow the instructions. Do you see the supplies over there? Each of you will be responsible for transporting these supplies to the pre-war camp, and we will protect you all the way. As long as you are obedient, there will be no danger along the way. Do you understand?" "Okay, yes, sir," everyone shouted in unison, but it seemed that the Uzumaki tribe members did not care much, and waved their hands to signal everyone to move the supplies. Bai Sui followed a few people to the storage area for supplies. It was obvious that the supplies here had been prepared. There were more than 20 wheelbarrows lined up side by side. On each wheelbarrow were bundled scrolls. It seemed that they were sealed scrolls that sealed the supplies, which was not much different from the last transportation in Bai Sui's memory. The ninjas in this world have such magical items as the sealing scroll. Other ninja clans don't know that the Uzumaki clan is a professional sealer. How could they not use this advantage? Don't look at the scrolls in front of you, there are only 20 or so carts. Maybe the supplies inside are enough to support the consumption of a small war. Without saying much, Bai Sui picked a wheelbarrow at random and pushed it in front of the 2 Uzumaki clan members, waiting for them to lead the team to leave. Soon the remaining few people also came over with wheelbarrows, so the group of 8 people set off in the moonlight. In order to take care of these civilians, a torch was inserted at the front of each car. Under the illumination of this torch, everyone could barely move in the night. After all, not everyone is like a ninja, who can use a little weak light to see things clearly in the dark. Of course, Bai Sui can. After all, he has crystallized in his danshin, and the whole person is different. The head is clear and the eyes are sharp. You can see the sun in the daytime and objects in the dark. You can see a flower stamen 100 steps away, and a mosquito larva swimming in the pond. You are strong and less tired. You can hear the sound of thunder and wind in your stomach. The danshin is warm, the urination is reduced, the four limbs are light and healthy, the spirit is refreshed, and you can walk 500 miles a day. The face is radiant, the skin is full and pleasant, the body is fragrant, the mouth is sweet, the mood is clear, the desire is not moved, and love, joy and sadness are all born from the heart. You can feel the heaven and earth with your thoughts, know the changes of wind and rain, know the alternation of extreme cold, distinguish the 4 seasons, and distinguish the 5 elements. Sometimes you can feel the hard and no good and bad fortune. Now, even if all the torches are extinguished, Bai Sui can still see the veins of leaves a foot away. Bai Sui even suspects that those ninjas are not better than Bai Sui in terms of eyesight alone, not counting those pupil techniques and related blood inheritance. This may also be one of his advantages. Bai Sui suddenly felt that it might rain at noon tomorrow, and according to Bai Sui's feeling, it would rain quite a bit. It seemed that the time for this material delivery was not chosen very well. There was no conversation overnight. The group walked about 30 kilometers. The sky was already a little white, and finally arrived at a village. It seemed that this batch of materials was urgently needed. There were also 6 villagers waiting in the village. They took the wheelbarrows from Bai Sui and others and continued to set off with 2 members of the Whirlpool clan. Bai Sui and others took a short rest in this village, and then they just had to return to the Whirlpool clan on their own. This mission could be said to be very easy and safe. At the same time, Bai Sui also realized that his chance to leave the Whirlpool clan had come, and it came so suddenly and peacefully. All the expected conflicts did not occur, and he had the opportunity to leave peacefully. Considering that once he left, it was very likely that someone would report it. Once he was targeted by the Whirlpool clan, it would be difficult to get away, so Bai Sui did not leave immediately, but could only rest first and leave when it rained at noon. Firstly, the 2 Uzumaki tribe members who were transporting the supplies would have gone far away, and secondly, the heavy rain could prevent civilians from reporting and cover up the traces of leaving. Bai Sui hurried into the arranged house to rest. He had been pushing the cart all night and traveling all night, and he didn't know what would happen next, so he naturally had to rest up. He slept until noon. The reason for this was that it was inconvenient to meditate with so many people, so he had to use inefficient sleep to recuperate. When Bai Sui woke up, the sky was already overcast, and after lunch, it started to rain heavily. The spring rain, with its unique coolness, drove all those who were still outside back to the house. Seeing that there was only the sound of rain outside the house, Bai Sui got up and went out. After saying to the few people who came with him that he was going to the toilet, Bai Sui left in a swagger wearing a straw raincoat. Chapter 13 New Life. Bai Sui walked calmly, and no one doubted him. This at least gave Bai Sui another hour to escape. He roughly identified the direction and made sure that he was not heading towards the Whirlpool clan. Then he left the route to his own feelings. He did not take any main roads, but only chose woods and wastelands. Every time he walked a section of the road, Bai Sui would look back. On the one hand, he made sure that there were no pursuers, and on the other hand, he wanted to see if he had left any obvious traces. There was no way. He did not have any professional tracking and anti-tracking skills in his previous life, and he could not get them in this life. Now Bai Sui could only simply clean up his traces based on some of the fur he learned from the movies and TV series in his previous life. However, Bai Sui knew that for a pure layman like him, the more mistakes he made, the longer he stayed in the wild, the more likely he would be caught up. What he urgently needed to do now was to find an area with a large population, preferably a big city, or a small village, but a small village would likely bring disaster to the other party. Bai Sui took a breath and walked quickly along the way, stepping on the road as much as possible with every step, and set off in a big stride towards an unknown direction. Originally, he would stop and look back from time to time, but later he simply stopped slowing down and left without looking back. Bai Sui's upper body was basically motionless, and his legs walked very fast, and he walked faster and faster. He walked from noon to dark, from heavy rain to morning fog, through the forest, across the river, through the mountain, and through the water. From being terrified to opening his heart, from being bound to being free, breaking the shackles, breaking free, listening to the heart, and feeling the spirit. This walk lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Bai Sui did not stop until he met the first person. When he came to his senses, Bai Sui was surprised to find that in these short 3 days, the Danzhu in his Danshin had increased by 1/3 compared to the original, which means that these 3 days were equivalent to nearly 1 year of hard work. Although he was disturbed by someone and broke away from the state of being one with nature, Bai Sui was not angry at all. After all, in his opinion, this might be inevitable. If he really wanted to avoid these people, he would naturally stay away from people in his state of spiritual connection with heaven and earth at that time. Since he did not choose to avoid them, there must be a reason. Bai Sui was in a forest. There were 5 people dressed as hunters about 40 to 50 meters away. They were dressed as hunters, but they only had a bamboo bow compared to ordinary people. They were obviously poor hunters. They were not hunting, or it should be said that they had finished hunting. There was a small black pig lying on the ground in the distance, but it was obvious that they did not have the energy to take care of the spoils for the time being. Instead, they were circling around one of the people sitting on the ground. It was obvious that they were in trouble. With the help of his powerful 5 senses, Bai Sui understood what happened from the conversations and actions of the few people. It turned out that the few people came out from the village to hunt. They originally wanted to hunt some mountain delicacies. But they did not expect to find this half-grown black pig in front of them. After confirming that it was alone, the few people decided to fight. Because the incident happened suddenly, the few people did not have time to dig any traps. They just relied on the bows and arrows in their hands to attack from multiple directions. Originally, several people were either on the tree or on the boulder. In any case, they were all in places that the black pig could not attack. Who would have thought that the black pig, disturbed by the bow and arrow, went crazy and rammed into the tree trunk where one of them was? Although the violent collision did not break the tree trunk, it did not even cause any serious damage. However, the person hiding in the tree was frightened by the black pig's action, and fell down from the tree in a moment of negligence, and fell in front of the black pig. At this moment, the black pig was still dizzy due to hitting the tree and could not move normally, so it did not attack immediately, but the man fell from the tree and was also seriously injured, and could not stand up for a while. In desperation, his companions emerged from their hiding places one after another, ready to take advantage of the black pig's poor condition and deal with it. After that, several people succeeded and failed, and successfully inserted 2 sharp knives into the black pig's neck, but its final struggle also injured several people. The most seriously injured person among them is now sitting on the ground, surrounded by the crowd. Of course, all of this was said by the person who fell from the tree, who repeatedly confessed in a repentant tone, saying things like, "It's all my fault. If I hadn't fallen from the tree, this wouldn't have happened." Bai Sui learned the cause and effect of the incident and decided to go up and talk to him to see if he could provide some help. Listen, several people were also alert, and Bai Sui had no place to hide, so he was discovered by everyone about 10 meters away from the crowd. Bai Sui spread his hands to indicate that he had no weapons in his hands. "I am a doctor who is fleeing. When I passed by here, I found that someone seemed to be injured. Do you need my help?" Several people looked at each other, and since they did not see any weapons on Bai Sui, the leader nodded and said to Bai Sui, "We do have someone injured here, so please come and take a look." Bai Sui didn't have much, so he ignored the vigilance of several people and walked to the side of the injured. The man in front of him had a wound on his left leg. It looked like something had cut the outside of his thigh. Judging from the scene, it was most likely to have been pierced and torn apart by the black pig's teeth. Bai Sui tore open his trouser leg. Seeing this, the leader stepped forward to help cut it open with a knife. Bai Sui nodded to express his gratitude. After tearing open the trouser leg, Bai Sui's brows relaxed slightly. It didn't look like there was any serious deformation, and the amount of bleeding was not too excessive. It seemed that the aorta was not injured. He gently pressed his right hand next to the wound and transferred the key in his body to it. There was no other purpose, just to explore whether the other party had any internal injuries. While sensing the other party's injuries, he looked inside and compared them with his own, confirming that there were no injuries to the bones, but only serious skin injuries. This is not the right place, especially the smell of blood may attract other wild animals. I will bandage him first, and then take him back according to the method I told you to treat him further. Don't worry, I have checked, There is no bone injury, just flesh wound. He asked for a kettle and washed the wound. At the same time, Bai Sui also found that his key could relieve the pain of the other party by wrapping the other party's wound, which further confirmed the identity of Dr. Bai Sui in the hearts of the others. Tear the other party's trouser legs into cloth, and use the fan-shaped bandage method, starting from the knee upwards to wrap the entire wound. Chapter 14 Settlement. Because Bai Sui had experienced an unfriendly encounter before, he had studied relevant medical knowledge in the inner scene. So although he had not really experimented with it, he still understood the relevant theories. For example, this time, although he could not stop the bleeding immediately because he did not have the corresponding medicine, the bandage could also stop the bleeding to a certain extent. Then they were asked to select 2 people to lift the injured person with the chair support method and head towards the village. The other 2 people found a tree trunk, tied the black pig's limbs to the tree trunk and carried it back. Not only that, Bai Sui saw that they had difficulty walking, and helped them get 3 wild birds, which they thought were the prey they had hunted before. Bai Sui and others also communicated on the road and exchanged names. The leader was called Naruto, who was about 34 or 35 years old. He was a senior hunter in the village, although the village had not been established for many years. In his narration, this village was built by various people whose homes were destroyed by war. Everyone fled their homeland and was able to live here in peace. They also invited Kashiwa to join the village. After all, a doctor is popular wherever he goes. The injured one is called Jing Shengli. According to Naruto, he is a good guy. Although he is a little reckless, he is very courageous. The man who fell from the tree is called Miki Ryukin. He just joined the hunting. This is his second hunting, so he is still a little inexperienced, but he is also a good boy. The other 2 who were carrying the black pig in the back were Yajima Yoshiaki and Yajima Yuta. The 2 were brothers. They were relatively dull, but hard-working. The village liked to ask the 2 for help when there was anything. Soon, the few people walked for less than an hour and saw the village. The reason why he stared at the time was that in order to avoid his previous situation, Kashiwa let the wound combine with a bandage cloth. There was no medical ninja among the people now. If you want to deal with such secondary trauma, it is extremely difficult. The people in the village also saw a few people, so when they were less than 100 meters away from the village, they went to meet the villagers who came to greet them. The leading hunter told the villagers about their experiences. "We have gained a lot this time. Jing Shengli was injured, but he has been treated by this Dr. Bai Sui. We will continue to treat him in the village later." A man who looked to be in his 40s stepped forward and pulled Bai Sui aside. "You are Dr. Bai Sui, you are really young and promising. I am the village chief. Jing Shengli and his family would like to express their gratitude to you." I wonder. The 2 of them left the big group and walked and talked on the side. In just 100 meters, when they entered the village, they exchanged a lot of information and finalized some things. The village chief was named Keiz Sadasa, and he had a son at home. The 2 of them could be said to be the actual founders of this village and the first people to settle here. The location of the village is actually behind a cave. The 2 people fled to the mountains to avoid a war, but they encountered wild beasts and found a cave with a diameter of about 1 meter during their escape. They originally wanted to spend the night in the cave, but they didn't expect that there was a plain behind it. So the 2 settled down in the plain, but because the cave was rugged and difficult to travel, and the supplies inside were scarce, so the 2 began to absorb refugees who fled to the vicinity, and built a village here together, and gradually began to develop the cave, so that people went from crawling in and out to normal entry and exit. Not only that, the crowd not only made a fire in the cave, but also built an outpost outside the cave. Some difficult-to-transport supplies were first placed at the outpost and then slowly transported. The village we saw before was actually an outpost, which was the first barrier to protect the safety of the village, and there was even a samurai guarding it. In the conversation with the village chief, Bai Sui confirmed that he would join the village as a doctor, and the village would also prepare a house and corresponding daily necessities for Bai Sui. After a brief talk, the 2 separated. The village chief went to prepare everything for Bai Sui, while Bai Sui was going to treat the injured Jing Shengli at the outpost. Since there was no corresponding medicine on hand, Bai Sui took the leaves of the holly and the leaves of the holly from nearby, mashed them, applied them to the cleaned wound with sugar, and then bandaged them, and told Jing Shengli not to use his legs as much as possible in the next few days, to rest, and to change the dressing once a day until the wound heals initially. Then, Under the guidance of the village chief's son, Keiichi, they came to the village behind the cave. Along the way, you can see that the people here live very well. Although the supplies may be scarce, everyone's face is very calm, without the numbness of surviving in the war. Not long after, they came to the residence prepared by the village chief for Bai Sui. The house is not big, but it occupies a large area. It is divided by a simple fence, and the overall area is about 90 square meters. The house should be only 50 square meters, and the garden is about 40 square meters. It seems to be specially prepared for Sui, and can be used to grow some common medicines. Thank you very much, the environment here is very good, I like it very much, please thank your father for me. Sui and Keiichi exchanged some politeness and then parted. Keiichi went back to discuss with his father, and Sui sat down on the tatami. Yes, the floor of the bedroom was paved with tatami, which was much better than the house he lived in the Uzumaki clan before, which showed that the village chief and his family really arranged it carefully and really wanted him to stay. Of course, Sui also knew that they were not welcoming him as a person, but welcoming the identity of a doctor. After all, the benefits that a doctor can bring to the village are too great. Apart from anything else, today's incident, although it will not directly cause casualties, after all, the working people have their own wisdom in life, but in such an era, if it is not handled in time, it is very likely to be infected, and it is basically a matter of life and death. In fact, if it were in the previous life, what Bai Sui did today would be considered illegal. After all, the cloth used to wrap the wound was not even sterilized. Bai Sui was also suffering from the lack of resources, and he relied on his own energy to use, so he had no choice but to do so. After all, sometimes the choices are not the best, but the only ones that can be made at the moment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15: The Leisurely Life of a Doctor. With his own residence, Bai Sui felt relieved. After lying quietly for a while, Bai Sui got up and got busy again. Not to mention that there was someone waiting for him to treat tomorrow. At least he couldn't use the unsterilized rags to bandage the wound tomorrow. At least he had to disinfect it. He searched the supplies prepared by the village chief for himself, trying to find some utensils that could be used. After searching for a while, he found that there were quite a few household items prepared for him in the village. Not to mention the pots and pans, there were all kinds of jars, stone mortars, stone mills, etc., whether they were related to doctors or not. It can be said that they arranged everything they could think of for Bai Sui, and even filled the buckets in the yard. So Bai Sui started his own business of boiling water, and boiled all kinds of food that could be boiled with hot water. This was because he didn't find wormwood, otherwise he might have to fumigate the whole house. After all, some medicines smell more like doctors. In fact, Bai Sui didn't know what level of medical skills had reached in the Warring States period. He could only hope that the gap between him and the mainstream would not be too big. After cleaning up the house, it was already dark, and Bai Sui began to cook. He didn't expect that the hunting captain Uric came to give him a portion of black pig meat. Bai Sui didn't refuse and accepted it after some courtesy. So Bai Sui's dinner today became a meat porridge. He was going to go out to find some medicine, but it was really late. Although he could see things at night, it was a bit scary in the eyes of others. So Bai Sui didn't act alone, and started meditating in the room, preparing to go out early the next morning. After entering into meditation again, Bai Sui found something different. When he escaped before, Bai Sui didn't stop, so he never took the initiative to practice. Of course, this doesn't mean that he didn't practice in the past 3 days. As mentioned before, when his heart was in harmony with the sky, he had passively accepted practice. During the day, he only felt that the dansu in his danshin was bigger and rounder. Now he entered into meditation and found the difference in his danshin. In addition to the dansu condensed by his own spirit, there is also a thick layer of energy around it, and there is a small bay of spiritual liquid composed of this energy under the danshin. After carefully feeling it, these energies are somewhat similar to the natural ki outside the body, but they are more pure and friendly. As soon as the yuanshin moved, a golden light enveloped the entire danshin, and he immediately knew the cause and effect. It turned out that these were natural ki, which were left after being infected by his own energy when he was communicating with the heaven and earth before. When these ki first entered Bai Sui's body, they were no different from those in the outside world, but they were driven by Bai Sui's own practice route and eventually flowed into the danshan and were continuously refined, and the bay of spiritual liquid was condensed in this way. Not only that, these refined natural ki are also spontaneously attracting the ki between the outside world and the heaven and earth. That is, Bai Sui has another means to slowly become stronger without actively practicing. Now there is no means to use. Otherwise it is equivalent to having another tube of mana that can automatically recover. And after Bai Sui's attempts, these natural ki can not only be restored passively, but also increased by active absorption. The only difference is whether it has been refined and whether it has been infected by Bai Sui. Passively absorbed ones can be directly mobilized after being refined, while actively absorbed ones have not been refined yet, and are not flexible to control, and need to be refined again. These assimilated natural ki can be well infected and controlled because they are of the same origin as the ki of heaven and earth. Although Bai Sui does not have a matching means of display now, it can be used through rough techniques. For example, if it is thrown out all at once, it will attack in the form of energy bombs. Although it seems to be a waste of energy and lacks skills, it at least gives Bai Sui another means of long-range attack. If it is added to the body, it will greatly enhance the strength and ability of the body, just like a god descending. Bai Sui practiced in the night and suddenly felt a chill. It turned out that Bai Sui had run for 3 days and 3 nights. With his ability to travel 500 miles a day, although he did not walk a straight road, he ran from the southeast of the land of fire to the land of fields, and directly crossed the entire territory of the land of fire. Compared with the Uzumaki clan, this place is much colder. When communicating with the village chief during the day, he also knew that this forest belongs to the junction of the land of fields and the land of iron. Therefore, there are few ninjas, and there are relatively many samurai. The samurai Kubotokayuki who guards the village at the outpost is said to be from the land of iron. The samurai did not say the specific reason, but it did not look like a pleasant thing, so the people in the village did not delve into it. After all, it is not a good thing to expose someone's scars, and it is not a wise choice to expose a samurai's scars. No one is willing to put their life and death in their hands because of a little curiosity. Bai Sui has now seen the power of ninjas, although only one-sidedly, but has not seen the ability of samurai, although they were completely crushed by ninjas and forced to withdraw from the stage of history. But the history of ninjas is thousands of years old. Even in such a long time, there are still samurai. They must be extraordinary, so Bai Sui will not despise them. Although there is no good opportunity and excuse now, I think after a period of contact, I can learn what I want to know from the samurai Kubota Kiyoshi. Abandoning his distracting thoughts, Bai Sui spent another night in practice. The next morning, Bai Sui, who was preparing to light a fire to cook, suddenly had a whim that he could already take the ki of heaven and earth into his body. Is he considered to be a ki eater? Huanzi says, those who eat meat are brave and fierce, those who eat grains are wise and clever, those who eat ki are gods and long-lived, and those who do not eat are immortal and divine. Bai Sui felt that he should be considered a ki eater. After all, although he has not yet been certified as a human immortal, he can live for more than 100 years. So how can he achieve not eating in the future? Try to infuse the natural ki in your body into your whole body to replace food for energy. After some attempts, it is indeed possible to do it. With only the passively absorbed ki, Bai Sui can already meet his daily energy needs. However, this means that Bai Sui cannot passively increase the reserves of ki, which can be said to be a mixed bag. Chapter 16 The Leisurely Life of a Doctor. Of course, it is not to say that there is no solution. Bai Sui can actively absorb the ki of heaven and earth to expand his capacity. In addition, Bai Sui found that the more spiritual liquid in his body, the more natural ki he could passively absorb. I think as long as I am stronger, I can supply energy to my body and still have spare energy for passive cultivation. Although it is very likely that my body will be strengthened by then and need more energy supply, but this is a matter for the future after all, and it is not clear now. Bai Sui decided to conduct an experiment first to see if there is any difference if he does not eat and relies solely on the energy supply of ki. Since he does not have to cook and eat, he can save time in the morning, so Bai Sui decided to go out and search nearby to see if there are any medicines that can be used. Bai Sui even thinks that he can try to prepare some external pills in the future. Bai Sui is now practicing the internal pill method. Although the external pill is not a must, it is also an excellent method to strengthen oneself. In fact, Bai Sui had come across several prescriptions for assisting cultivation in his previous life, but at that time they were all aimed at ghost immortals, and the efficacy of the medicine was to enhance the spirit by consuming the physical body. In this life, Bai Sui felt that he could not use it. After all, this physical body was still very useful for the human immortal path, so there was no need to use such medicine. Bai Sui even had some doubts whether the ancient kings in his previous life died after taking such elixirs. After all, in the early days, what was the spiritual transcendence of the corpse immortal, not the immortality of the physical body. And that was indeed an immortal prescription, and it was even very likely to be a genuine immortal prescription used by immortals, but the request was different, so this elixir turned from an immortal elixir into poison. Without thinking about those things, Bai Sui started his journey to find medicine. Chinese herbal medicine can be roughly divided into antipyretic drugs, heat-clearing drugs, antirheumatic drugs, diuretic and dampness-infiltrating drugs, expectorant and cough-relieving drugs, qi-regulating drugs, blood-activating drugs, hemostatic drugs, digestive drugs, anthelmintic drugs, laxative drugs, summer-clearing drugs, cold-relieving drugs, tranquilizing and antispasmodic drugs, tonic drugs, astringent drugs, heart-hardening drugs, external-use drugs, etc. Considering that the most commonly used drugs in this village are the 5 hunters, Bai Sui intends to collect more hemostatic and anthelmintic drugs. Unfortunately, it is the wrong season now. It is still spring, and most of the drugs that Bai Sui knows are picked in autumn. There are not many drugs that can be used now, but of course there is no harvest. Loropetalum, roots, flowers, and leaves can all be used as medicine, mainly for the treatment of various bleeding, coughing up blood, nosebleeds, uterine bleeding, hemorrhoid bleeding, ulcer bleeding, etc., and the treatment is also simple, just decoct in water, while traumatic bleeding requires fresh leaves to be crushed and applied externally, which was the method used yesterday, and loropetalum is also a drug that can be picked throughout the season. Deer hoof grass, the whole plant is used as medicine, and it can be harvested all year round, but it needs to be dry before use. Although it is not used today, it can be harvested for future use. The usage is also simple, just grind it into fine powder and sprinkle it on the wound surface. Ranunculus, the whole plant is used as medicine, and it can be harvested all year round. It is poisonous and can be used to kill mosquito larvae. Take fresh grass and chop it, soak it in water at 119 for a day, and take the juice to spray the puddles and other mosquito larvae breeding places. Although it is just like spring and there are no mosquitoes, I think it will not be long, so we can make corresponding preparations first. There is no way. Now it is early spring, and the medicines that can be used are already scarce. In addition, Bai Sui was not specialized in this in his previous life, and he was more likely to follow the map, so the choices are relatively narrow. But fortunately, it is early spring now, and there are few poisonous insects. It is also possible to make light powder, sulfur, realgar and other things to drive away poisonous insects. During this period of searching for medicine, Bai Sui has been putting half of his spirit into his own Yuanshan Guanghua, searching for the pictures in his memory of the previous life while comparing them with the plants in the forest. After the verification with things, many knowledge that only stayed at the impression level were gradually mastered by Bai Sui. Although Bai Sui can only use a few medicines and methods now, Bai Sui believes that as time goes by, he will become more and more professional, and the medicines he can buy will become more and more comprehensive. When he went back to dry the deer hoof grass, Bai Sui thought of his previous attempts at the 5 elements. Fire is to release ki, so that the ki controlled by him can operate in a discrete form. Can it show the nature of fire? I didn't succeed in using the ki cultivated in my body before. What about this natural ki now? Is it feasible? After several attempts, Bai Sui can initially make ki show the characteristics of heating. Although he hasn't directly ignited the flame, it is still effective for drying medicine. When he first started, he lacked control and burned a herb. In order not to waste the herb, Bai Sui found a piece of cloth to wet it and tried to dry it with ki. After several attempts, Bai Sui was able to successfully dry the herb without burning it. Although he could not release it externally for the time being, he could only release it around his body. But if he was slapped by Bai Sui, he should be able to get a local burn. Have I practiced a fiery sunpoem? I didn't expect that others would enter the Tao through martial arts, but how could I practice martial arts through cultivation? With this idea, Bai Sui continued to try the other 4 attributes. Not to mention that he really found something. Through trial and error, he found that the wood attributed key could accelerate the growth of plants, but with Bai Sui's current ability, the effect was minimal. The metal attributed key can increase the toughness of the body or other things, but it is best for the increase of one's own body, and the rest are second. The water attributed key that Bai Sui has currently developed is its cold attribute. Compared with drying herbs, Bai Sui can use it to freeze some ingredients. He has not found any other uses for the time being. As for using it against the enemy, Bai Sui experimented and found that the effect was not good. The earth attributed key is the most different. After Bai Sui's attempts, he found that it has a healing effect. This can be said to have greatly enhanced Bai Sui's current medical methods and can make up for the lack of his own medicines and equipment to a certain extent. In this way, Bai Sui has been repeatedly experimenting and testing at home until someone came to find him, and then he remembered that he still had things to do today. The person who came was a little boy, Jing Shengli's younger brother Jing Anhong. Judging from the blush on his face and his breath that had not yet been evened out, he should have come directly. Naturally, there was no need to let the other party wait any longer. It was just right to test the actual effect of his own key on others. So he crushed the dried deer hoof grass, put it in a small jar, and then took the cloth strips that had been steamed in advance and walked towards Jing's house. Chapter 17 Leisurely Life of a Doctor. When the two arrived at Jing Shengli's house, they found that the village chief and his son were also among them. They had obviously been waiting here for a while. Asking Jing Anhong to boil a basin of water for him, Bai Sui briefly greeted everyone, and then came to Jing Shengli to check his injuries. He removed the paste applied yesterday and checked the wound. Fortunately, although the wound did not heal significantly, there was no sign of deterioration, which was good news for Bai Sui. Soon the hot water was boiled. After Bai Sui cleaned the wound, he sprinkled the deer hoof grass powder in his jar on the wound. After that, he did not bandage it immediately, but tried to use the key in the way of earth and covered it on the wound. It seemed to have no effect, but Bai Sui knew that these key had been stored in the flesh and blood near the wound in a unique form. After that, he only needed to rest and wait for these stored key to nourish the flesh and blood. Growth? Suddenly, an idea emerged in Bai Sui's heart. Since it was growth, could he use the wood-attributed key to promote it? Do it when you think of it, and if you are watching from the side, there will be no accidents. Bai Sui stared at the opponent's wound after changing the key attribute in his hand. Soon, Bai Sui found that the wound covered by the medicine powder began to grow. Although it was extremely weak, it was also discovered by Bai Sui. After feeling it, the earth attribute key that was previously contained around the opponent's wound was rapidly consumed while the wound grew. Bai Sui knew that his idea was right, so he withdrew the wood attribute key. After all, it can't be too outrageous. It's recovering very well. If you apply this medicine for another 2 or 3 days, the wound will heal. Then you can rest for a while and it will be fine, Bai Sui said calmly, meeting the gaze looking at him. Hearing this, the younger Jing Anhong was the happiest, and immediately ran to his brother Jing Shengli to talk. After washing his hands, Bai Sui chatted with the village chief and his son. I think Dr. Bai Sui's medical skills are really superb. In the past, we just hoped that such injuries would not cause fever. After fever, basically a laborer would die. Really, eh? I wonder what injuries Dr. Bai Sui is best at treating? I can tell the villagers when the time comes to avoid another tragedy. Bai Sui did not hide anything about this and said directly, oh, I really haven't counted this aspect. Whether it is internal and external injuries or cold and vomiting blood, he knows a little bit. Although he is not well trained, he can still take a look at some minor symptoms. Hearing this, the village chief and his son's eyes were about to pop out. After all, this village has been established for nearly 10 years. There have been no less than 30 families who have come and gone, but now there are less than 20 families left. Although there are various reasons, if there is a general practitioner, I think at least a few more people can be saved. For example, Mickey Ryukin, who had just joined the hunt, his father died because of a fever caused by infection after being injured. That is why he lost control of his emotions when facing the injured Jing Shengli in the woods, because he thought of his father who died of the injury. In fact, Bai Sui still wanted to spread his medical skills as much as possible. It is always good to be able to save some people. However, after considering some things, Bai Sui did not speak, but talked about another thing. I have looked at it these 2 days and found that the children in the village are illiterate. If necessary, I can also teach them some simple words. Having such an idea is also out of improving his status in the village and facilitating future activities in the village. Of course, Bai Sui's own love of being a teacher and helping others cannot be ignored. In addition, Bai Sui does not want to wander around. Such a small village in a low-lying place can be said to be a rare place to live. After all, Bai Sui is not immortal now, and has not left the category of human beings. Humans are social creatures, and cannot be completely separated from the crowd. Although Bai Sui likes quietness, he just hopes that his life can be relatively quiet, not that he will not see a person for decades, otherwise Bai Sui feels that he will go crazy. The two village chiefs naturally agreed with Bai Sui's idea. After all, in the Warring States period, people who could read had status even if they were not nobles. So although the two guessed Bai Sui's identity, they did not say much, and just chatted with each other in a compliment. Seeing that it was almost noon outside, the few people did not eat at Jing Shengli's house, but returned to their residences. After Bai Sui came back, he simply tidied the house, mainly processing the medicinal materials he had collected before. After all, he left in a hurry before and did not tidy up. Now there is nothing to do, so naturally he has to tidy up the house. After everything was tidied up, Bai Sui began to study the use of qi. After this attempt, Bai Sui found that they were not like the 5 elements, but more like the 4 images of Shaoyang, Taiyang, Shaoyin, and Taiyin. Wood Shaoyang, Fire Taiyang, Gold Shaoyin, Water Taiyin. Not only that, Shaoyang, Taiyang, Shaoyin, and Taiyin can represent spring, summer, autumn, and winter respectively, but there is no soil in them. In the concept of the previous life, there are not only 4 seasons, but also a 5th season, long summer, and the position of long summer is between each season, that is, spring long summer, summer long summer, autumn long summer, winter long summer, spring. The corresponding to long summer is earth, and this is also the case in Bai Sui's experiment. The earth attribute key is like a combustion aid, which can provide energy for each attribute, thereby enhancing the effect and power of the corresponding attribute. The earth attribute key has a good penetration and adhesion effect, and can be well combined with other key and things. In other words, if Bai Sui wants to have any further operations, the study of earth attributes is essential. With the research direction, Bai Sui is more looking forward to his future. Days passed one by one, and Bai Sui also thoroughly understood the personnel composition of this village. If Bai Sui is not counted, there are a total of 6 professions in the village, including village chief, samurai, craftsman, hunter, fisherman, and farmer. There are 3 people in the village chief's family. In addition to the father who is the village chief, there are also his son and daughter-in-law. The only samurai family is Kyuboden Noriyuki, who came from the Iron Country and lived alone in the village outpost. The hunters are the Yajima family, Murai family, Sakai family, and Miki family that we met earlier. They are the semi-armed forces of the village besides the samurai. After all, they are the few people in the village who have weapons. Chapter 18: The Leisurely Life of a Doctor. There is only one fisherman, namely, Mr. and Mrs. Tanamura Takashi and their son, who is a very clever boy. As for the craftsman, he is a lone man named Teruo Nakano. He got separated from his family during the escape. Apart from some necessary exchanges, he is unwilling to communicate with others too much, so Bai Sui doesn't know much. Farmers are the most numerous in the village, with a total of 9 families and 2 children. Except for 3 of these 9 families who are considered early settlers, the other families joined in later. According to Bai Sui's observation, the reason that has been restricting the development of the village over the years is the lack of women. There are many single young men in the village. They are all of marriageable age, but they have no marriage partners. However, there is no way. After all, the location of the village is indeed remote, and it is difficult for ordinary refugees to come here. Similarly, the village cannot let others know the location in a big way. After all, this will lead to disaster. And Bai Sui just did this, exiling their extra energy to study, starting with a 50 sound chart, and then using the etymology plus association memory method, starting with the pronunciation and shape of kana, to teach them some common words and phrases. As for grammar problems, there is no need to worry. After all, although they are illiterate, they can speak, and they only need to be corrected in some specific places. After all, Bai Sui's requirements are not high, as long as they can read and write, and can understand basic writing. Bai Sui does not want to cultivate any literary writers. The more important thing is actually in the back. While learning words and phrases, teach them to recognize some simple plants, and simultaneously inform them of some collection points, and let them collect some when they see them, which can be regarded as a kind of education and entertainment, lol. Not only that, Bai Sui also took them to dig a pit in a remote place in the village. There is no way now that the village dumps excrement directly into the downstream of the stream. Although it should not affect them who are fetching water upstream, Bai Sui still feels a little disgusted. So under the leadership of Bai Sui, it took 5 days for the children to dig out a 2-compartment harmless septic tank, which can not only avoid the breeding of mosquitoes, but also ferment fertilizer. The villagers who used it for the first time were not used to it, but this was what the doctor required. After learning that it could also increase the fertility of the land and increase the yield of crops, the village chief directly decided to do so. In the past, the village did not know how to fertilize the fields. The key was that human feces were not used. After all, if the proportion was not properly controlled without fermentation, it would often be counterproductive. In the past, the method circulated in the village was to use duck manure mixed with some rotten leaves to increase the fertility of the land. However, the village was originally established by refugees, and many materials were not complete, let alone ducks. In recent years, there was almost no suitable fertilizer, and the only way was to dig silt from the river. It can be said that it was time-consuming and labor-intensive, and the effect was very limited. Now that there is a stable source of fertilizer, the village naturally recognizes Bai Sui more. So the whole village began to change under the subtle influence of Bai Sui. Time flies, and Bai Sui not only takes root here, but also establishes prestige among the people. After all, whether it is fertilizer or water wheel, these facilities that can facilitate the people are found in the memory of the previous life by Bai Sui, and they are tested one by one. Although some of them do not conform to the folk customs and productivity here, there are also many that have brought real benefits to everyone. And these benefits have gradually radiated from the village to the outpost. Let Kubota Jixing, who is not very concerned about the village, also know that the Dr. Bai Sui is a person of great origin. In fact, the village has always suspected that Bai Sui is a nobleman who has fallen because of the war. Because Kubota Jixing has always kept himself out of the village, Bai Sui has not had many opportunities to communicate with him. In addition, through Bai Sui's perception, he has far surpassed the other party in many aspects, and feels that the other party may not be very powerful among the samurai, so he has drifted here. Unexpectedly, after Bai Sui returned from collecting herbs, the samurai Kubota Jixing, with a smell of alcohol, chatting with Bai Sui. Instead of talking about his own experience, he talked about the theory of bloodline and complained to Kashiwasu. Thinking that the entire plot of Naruto was an internal struggle of the Otsutsuki clan, Kashiwasu objected in his heart but also said something. However, he didn't expect that the other party seemed to have found a soulmate, and he became more and more excited as he spoke. Everything about us is determined at the moment we are born, whether it is talent or capacity, it is already destined, and the future, in the end. Bai Sui really felt that the other party had gone astray, not entirely, not to mention the distant past. Just take the village as an example. If it is as you said, then the children in the village will never have the opportunity to learn to read, and they will never be able to learn it no matter what, because their lives are determined when they are born. Suddenly hearing Bai Sui's rebuttal, Kubota Jixing was stunned and subconsciously retorted, "That's not you." "No," Bai Sui interrupted the other party directly, "I don't think everything is determined when a person is born. I think the difference here is in opportunities. Your background actually determines part of the opportunities. The better your background, the more opportunities they can access and the more choices they can make." Finding that Kubota Jixing didn't finish his rebuttal, Bai Sui continued, "For example, medical skills. While teaching those children to read, I also taught them some simple medical knowledge. This is the opportunity I gave them. According to what you said, they should inherit from their ancestors, and those who farmed before can only farm. I don't think it means that they can only farm, but that they have very few opportunities to choose from, and inheriting from their ancestors is the easiest opportunity for them to seize, that's all." Feeling that he was somewhat convinced, Kubota Noriyuki quickly interrupted, No, if you hadn't come, they would definitely still inherit their ancestral business. Their changes are because of you, not because of themselves. Bai Sui smiled and quietly changed the concept. Look, you thought that everything was destined before. And now you think that other opportunities are only given by others, and you can't actively get them, right? Yes, that's right. Their changes are all because of you, not because of themselves. So this is indeed an opportunity you gave them, not something they got themselves. It seems that Kubota Noriyuki didn't realize that Bai Sui had limited the topic to the question of whether he could get the opportunity. Chapter 19 Leisurely Life of a Doctor. Bai Sui nodded to indicate that he understood what the other party meant. Then let's talk about whether they can get opportunities by themselves, that is, they can get opportunities through this war. For example, a tenant farmer who was originally under a noble came to the village because of fleeing. Then he has the opportunity to choose his career again, right? No, this time Kubota Kayuki was very confident. He can only do his original job because he only knows how to do it. See, you have also discovered the problem. The reason why he can only choose his original job is because he only knows how to do it. So what if this person was a laborer before? He used to be a laborer who carried goods for the nobles. Do you think he would give up the opportunity to get a piece of land to cultivate by himself? Will he still be a laborer? Bai Sui complained in his heart. He really didn't know what good examples there were in this world. After all, there was no king, prince, general or minister here, and no Mingtezu who started with a broken bowl. You have to know that in the previous life, even in myths and legends, everyone was equal. After all, it was Pangu who created the world and turned his flesh and blood into rivers and the earth, and Nuwa made people out of clay, so the disguised people were considered to have the blood of Pangu. However, Kashiwasa knew that it was precisely because there were no such people in this world that there was such a deep-rooted theory of bloodline. That's why he avoided discussing opportunities with the other party instead of discussing other things. After all, there was really no case that was convincing enough. Especially in the communication with Kubota Kayuki, he also implicitly understood that the other party was hit by the extraordinary power of the ninja. Although Kashiwasa also knew that in the Naruto plot, there was a general of the Iron Country, Mifune, who was known as the legendary master of IAI slashing, and his swordsmanship was extremely fast, which could prevent the ninjas from even having the chance to form seals. But this is something people in the future cannot say now. You have to know that the plot says that the samurai of the Iron Country signed a peace treaty with the ninjas for hundreds of years, which means that there must be powerful samurai who can compete with the ninjas. It's just that Kashiwasa doesn't know the specific situation, and it's not easy to give an example directly. Seeing that Kubota Kashiro didn't refute immediately, but took a sip of wine, Bai Sui took the opportunity to ask, let's not talk about them. I don't see you are injured, and you are a samurai. There is no need to hide in this village. Is there something wrong? Kubota Kashiro on the opposite side. Do you know ninjas? Bai Sui thought to himself that it was true, so I said it was because of this. Yes, I know. Not only do I know, I have seen ninjas fight with my own eyes. Kubota Kashiro glanced at Bai Sui and didn't say much, and didn't know what the other party was thinking. Since you have seen ninjas fight, it is easier to understand. Hey, I always thought I was actually pretty good, and I was also well known in the Iron Kingdom. But I didn't expect that my nearly 30 years of hard training could not defeat the ninjutsu of any child. Not just one person, but everyone present at the time, whether skilled or not, could release ninjutsu. Any of their attack ninjutsu could kill me. And I needed to chop the earth wall they raised at will with all my strength for several hits to defeat it. And I learned from my communication with them that all of their clansmen will have the ability to release ninjutsu after reaching a certain age. Isn't this destined by heaven? How can we compete with them? Isn't the so-called war and peace a joke that they can summon and dismiss at will? Bai Sui waited for the other party to finish speaking. You are right, they do have the corresponding bloodline in their blood, but that is because of the efforts of their ancestors. It was their ancestors who provided such a choice for their descendants through their own efforts. And you may have misunderstood the power of normal ninjas. You must know that there are no ninjas in the Iron Country. There are no armed samurai to protect it, right? Kubota Noriyuki nodded. That's right, the Iron Country is a neutral country outside the ninjas and does not participate in the war between them. Yes, have you ever thought about why the Iron Country can be free from war? Is it because those ninjas don't want to settle in that land? I don't think so. What do you think? Bai Sui didn't want the other party to answer, but continued. If that's the case, then why don't the ninjas capture the last barrier of the samurai? Let's not talk about whether they can do it or not, at least the ninjas can't do it easily, and they can't win as easily as you think. Have you ever thought about why this is the case? This shows that the samurai have the ability to compete with the ninjas. Kyuboden Noriyuki was very unconvinced. How is it possible? If there really is such an ability, how could I not know anything about it? Kashiwasa looked into the other's eyes. Then how do you explain that my iron country can stay out of the war? If the samurai really don't have the power to compete with them, why are there still countries armed with samurai to this day? This doesn't make sense, right? Kyuboden Noriyuki hesitated. And we can analyze why the samurai only gain a foothold in the iron country? What is different here from other countries? Kashiwasa tried to guide the other party to give the answer himself. Kyuboden Noriyuki's eyes lit up, as if he had thought of something. I know, it's iron. The iron country produces iron ore, and the samurai have armor. The samurai's armor can resist ninjutsu. Seeing that the other party was indeed thinking in the direction he guided, Kashiwasa nodded secretly, knowing that the topic was almost over. Yes, it is indeed armor. Although the defensive effect of armor is limited, the chakra of a ninja is not infinite. How many powerful ninjutsu do you think a ninja can perform under normal circumstances? After all, ninjas need to make hand seals to use ninjutsu. As long as you rely on the protection of armor to close the distance between the two sides and force the other party to have no time to make hand seals, you can fight with a samurai's most familiar physical skills. I can't say that you can definitely win the battle, but at least let both sides stand on a platform where they can fight, and this is the reason why the Iron Country can get out of it. What do you think? After hearing this, Kyuboden Noriyuki felt that Kashiwasa was right, and he also answered the doubts in his heart, but he still felt that there was something he couldn't say. So he took a big gulp of wine and sat there without saying anything. Although he didn't say anything, Bai Sui could see from his eyes that he was thinking, so Bai Sui quietly left the outpost. Chapter 20 The Leisurely Life of a Doctor. Thanks to the craftsmen in the village and Bai Sui's increasingly advanced practice, Bai Sui manually assembled a steam engine and a DC electric motor. Bai Sui had an idea for making these two machines. That is the fire escape and lightning escape of ninjas. Bai Sui felt that if the ninjas in this world really want to develop, they should find a new profession or position that can play their role. Once these two machines are promoted, at least the ninjas who can use fire escape and lightning escape can be used as a renewable energy source and find their position in society again. The reason why these two machines are related to Bai Sui's practice is that some of the fine processing places cannot be made by the craftsman. Bai Sui relies on his own nurturing key sword to cut, or uses the strength of the gold-based key to strengthen his hands and smash it out. The reason why the nurturing key sword is used is that when Bai Sui tried to apply ki, he tried to introduce ki into the lungs for nurturing. It was found that not only the nurturing speed is fast, but also the power limit is high. Even the newly nurtured ki sword can achieve the effect of breaking the monument and splitting the stone. Bai Sui found that the reason why the effect was so good was that the ki nurtured in the lungs would automatically show the properties of gold. And thanks to the nature of ki, the ki sword not only enhances its power, but also enhances its own controllability. It can be controlled by its own thoughts after leaving the body, just like a flying sword. So Bai Sui is like having an extremely sharp carving knife that can cut iron like mud. Although it is difficult to control its carving and polishing of fine parts, Bai Sui now has plenty of time to squander. In addition to regular practice every day, the bulk of the remaining time is to teach children to learn and grow. However, Bai Sui, who no longer needs to eat and sleep, has a lot of time at his disposal every day. Even if the time for collecting herbs in the mountains and treating villagers is further excluded, Bai Sui still has about 5 hours of free time left for him to use at his own will every day. In this era of lack of entertainment, there are only a few ways of entertainment that ordinary civilians can access. Bai Sui spends more of this time looking through the memories of his previous life. In his previous life, Bai Sui read a lot of books to kill time or to please his body and mind. Now these books have once again brought healing to Bai Sui. However, not all books are nutritious. When reading for the first time, the novelty can support people to continue reading, but when reading for the second time, Bai Sui found that many books that he originally thought were very interesting could no longer be read. Either he was spoiled by himself, or he was not interested in the subsequent content, so Bai Sui could read fewer and fewer books. In the end, he found that the books that he could really watch repeatedly were the classics that he was not very willing to read before. After reading the classics of hundreds of schools for more than half a year, Bai Sui decided to change his mind, so Bai Sui set his sights on handmade works that could also polish time. In addition to the two mechanical devices mentioned above, Bai Sui also made an 8-sided sword for himself. Thanks to the location of the village, Bai Sui brought back a lot of ochre when he collected herbs in the woods. Without a professional furnace, Bai Sui did not force it. He built a simple earth furnace and tried to use his own key to control the key of fire to gather in it, raising the temperature little by little. In the end, Bai Sui spent 3 months of scattered time and finally smelted an iron rod. Although Bai Sui did not have the skill of iron making, he had the key sword. In the end, he used the key sword to cut the iron rod into a sword. Because there was no condition for pickling, Bai Sui also carved patterns on the sword with a key sword. He was really unwilling to spend time making an iron scabbard, so Bai Sui casually cut down a small tree and made a wooden one. Once the warrior had leg pain and came to Bai Sui for treatment, he saw the sword that Bai Sui hung on the wall. When he learned that this was used by Bai Sui himself, the warrior was still very surprised. After all, although he could find that Bai Sui was strong through some observations, there was really no trace of practice left. Especially Bai Sui's hands, even if he went up the mountain to collect herbs in these years, there were no wounds or calluses, and they were white and tender. So the samurai didn't believe that Bai Sui could use the sword. Even though he came here because of leg pain, he couldn't care less now and insisted on trying his hand at Bai Sui. In fact, Bai Sui had never practiced any sword skills. He usually treated it as a fitness equipment. After all, this was a sword made of pure iron, weighing more than 4 jin and close to 5 jin. That is, now Bai Sui has made some achievements in cultivation, and his physical fitness is far superior to Superman. Otherwise, if it was in the previous life, he really couldn't hold it for long. The samurai Kubota Jixing was also surprised after trying it. Weapons are not better the heavier, this is not applicable to actual combat, especially your sword is more than twice as heavy. Kubota Jixing didn't say the rest, but he could see from the other party's eyes that he didn't trust Bai Sui. He felt that Bai Sui must have lied to him and must be a guy who couldn't use a sword. Bai Sui didn't say much, and decided to let the other party see what it meant to defeat 10 skills with 1 force. After all, although Bai Sui didn't know any sword skills, he also practiced the 4 sword techniques of hitting, stabbing, blocking, and washing. Although in the previous life, the swordsmanship schools have further subdivided it into chopping, stabbing, tapping, collapsing, striking, lifting, picking, chopping, intercepting, supporting, pressing, hanging, cutting, and lifting, pulling, piercing, pressing, clouding, wiping, framing, and sweeping, carrying, pulling, blocking, holding, pushing, rubbing, and twisting. But no matter how it changes, it still remains the same. Bai Sui has really practiced these 4 mother swords seriously. Bai Sui stood upright naturally and looked at Kubota Kayuki, holding the sword in his left hand, bending his right thumb into a palm, and performed a sword-holding ceremony. After the ceremony, Bai Sui immediately threw away the scabbard with his left hand, took the lead in a step forward and chopped, and went straight to Kubota Kayuki's face. Kubota Kayuki, who originally wanted to draw his sword and slash, was interrupted by the sudden attack. He quickly turned sideways to swing his sword, but he didn't expect a huge force to come, almost shaking the long sword in his hand away. After missing the attack, Bai Sui's forearm turned back and swept the sword in a bow step, continuing to attack. Kubota Kayuki quickly retreated and blocked with his sword. Seeing that the opponent was knocked off balance by 2 consecutive attacks, Kashiwasu continued to attack, lowering his center of gravity towards the opponent's retreating right leg and making a lunge to slash the sword. Kubota Noriyuki, who had originally wanted to switch from blocking to sweeping, had to change his tactics temporarily when he saw that the long sword was about to cut his leg, raising his right leg high, taking the opportunity to take a step back, and at the same time retracting the long sword in front of him to block Kashiwasu's further attack. Chapter 21 Leisurely Life of a Doctor. At this time, Kubota Jixing had completely lost his contempt. It can be said that the 3 swords before had completely convinced him that the man in front of him was definitely a real martial artist. In his opinion, although Bai Sui used a relatively rare double-edged sword, his skills were superb and his power was amazing. However, he didn't expect that Bai Sui didn't actually specialize in any sword skills. He relied purely on his good physical fitness, faster movements, faster reactions, and stronger strength? There was a simple pause between the two. After all, this was just a competition and not a fight, so Bai Sui didn't hold his hands tightly. Seeing that Kubota Jixing had stabilized his center of gravity again, Bai Sui attacked again, with a simple step forward and side slash. Kubota Jixing had been watching Bai Sui's every move since just now, and he immediately responded at this moment, moving his center of gravity slightly downward and blocking with his long sword. At this moment, he knew that he had no advantage in attacking, so he could only defend first and find loopholes in Bai Sui's moves to counterattack. But Bai Sui took advantage of the situation and took a step forward to reverse the attack, then turned his wrist and swept the sword, forcing the opponent to defend. After a simple exchange of moves, Kashiwasui already knew his own weight. It can be said that he was completely relying on his body to bully others. He himself had not practiced any exquisite moves. Even if he continued to fight, it would be just like that for him. So Kashiwasui stabbed down, forcing the opponent to turn sideways to defend, and had to face the next attack with one hand, while he pulled his arm halfway and swept horizontally, using half of his own strength. The swords collided, making a kang sound. Under the huge force, Kubota Jixing only felt that his knuckles were torn, and the long sword in his hand had been knocked away at this moment. Looking at the torn and bleeding knuckles of his right hand, Kubota Jixing bowed to Kashiwasui and saluted. "I'm very sorry, I actually doubted whether you had really practiced sword before. I was really blind, sorry." Seeing the other party apologize so sincerely, Kashiwasui was suddenly at a loss. What is this? Is this what it means to defeat an opponent with sincerity? Bai Sui hurriedly stepped forward to help him up. No, I really don't look like someone who has practiced swordsmanship. It's normal for you to have such doubts. Come on, come upstairs, I'll take a look at your leg. He asked Kubota Kayuki how he felt, and then looked at his painful area to confirm that there was no fracture, friction sound and obvious deformity. Your ankle is sprained. Have you sprained it before? Kubota Kayuki also nodded. I sprained it when I was practicing kendo since I was a child, and it was always this foot. I have sprained it every now and then over the years. Bai Sui nodded to show that he understood, took out the needle sharpened by the key sword, and pierced it straight into the kunlun point between the outer ankle and the Achilles tendon, about 1 inch in, and then Bai Sui guided the key in his body into it in the form of earth attribute. His Kubota Kayuki took a slight breath. Bai Sui asked casually, what does it feel like, sore and numb, from the ankle to the toes? Kubota Kayuki answered immediately. Bai Sui nodded and ignored him. He continued to pierce the Jugu point, also known as the Zuansong point, 3 inches above the outer ankle. He also pierced straight for about 1 inch and guided the earth-attributed key inside. This time, before Bai Sui could ask, Kubota Kayuki spoke first. This time, it's not just the toes, the whole foot is sore and swollen. After letting the other party lie with the needle for half an hour, Bai Sui took out the needle and felt the key injected into the acupuncture point. When he found that the key had already flowed to the injured area along the meridians and attached to it for nourishment, Bai Sui was relieved. This is a method of application that Bai Sui has explored in recent years. It only needs to inject the earth-attributed key into the corresponding acupuncture points to greatly enhance the treatment effect, and there are no side effects. The only thing to pay attention to is to avoid the effect being too good and appearing too eye-catching. After taking out the needle, Bai Sui took out 1 or 2 pieces of oxalis, mashed it and applied it to the sprained area. Okay, you apply this medicine first, and you can remove it at night. You don't need to come tomorrow, but come again the day after tomorrow. I will come again the day after tomorrow. If I treat you 3 times like this, the root of your disease will be cured. By the way, don't do strenuous activities during this period, and don't put too much pressure on your ankle to avoid worsening, Bai Sui instructed the other party before he left. In fact, the herbal medicine doesn't need to be applied at all. It can be cured by acupuncture alone. Bai Sui deliberately concealed it to make it seem that the effect is not that good. Similarly, even if the other party starts exercising after returning, it won't be a big deal. The key attached to the injured part will almost heal the injury when he returns. Yes, over the years, Bai Sui has relied on the magical key and his half-understood acupuncture methods to cure various diseases of men, women, young and old in the village. In fact, there are too few people in the village, and there are not many diseases. Bai Sui doesn't even have many opportunities to follow the map. And because they are all engaged in physical work, Everyone is very strong and rarely gets sick. Most of them are some strain injuries. Under Bai Sui's conditioning, they are almost healed. Now Bai Sui is often troubled by the good effect of Qi. After all, this way he will have no chance to practice. At the same time, Bai Sui will not allow himself to delay the treatment of the villagers because of his own moral values. After all, it is another situation if he can but does not do it. However, an excellent person will always be noticed. No, in the mouths of several peddlers who have come to the village, the reputation of Bai Sui, the miracle doctor, has spread. Of course, this is more circulated among the lower-class civilians. After all, there are still ninjutsu in this world. Although it may not be as proficient as Senjo and Uzumaki, the magical effect of chakra will always be developed by people. Especially those families have hundreds of thousands of years of inheritance. In the long time, every family that has survived to this day has not only specialized in the development of its own secrets in blood inheritance, but also has extensive knowledge. Also thanks to the application of chakra, not only those ninja families, but even the nobles of various countries can enjoy the benefits. So even if someone heard about Bai Sui, they only thought that he had mastered some pretty good means among the common people, but he could never compare with the ninja. Bai Sui just didn't know the ins and outs of this, otherwise he would definitely be grateful for their contempt. After all, quietly staying in this small village and slowly improving his life level was what he wanted. As for other power and fame, on the one hand, Bai Sui's natural character was like this, so he was not very interested. In addition, he had experienced his family's fall from a high place in his previous life, and the many feelings of gain and loss also made Bai Sui deliberately stay away from power. On the other hand, Bai Sui knew that once he cultivated the Tao fruit, as long as Bai Sui wanted, he could easily obtain the power that ordinary people desired. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Unexpected Disaster. Since defeating Kyuboden Noriyuki, this samurai who used to wander around the village has been chatting with Kashiwasa from time to time. His words show that he wants to learn from Kashiwasa, but Kashiwasa knows his own business, and it is not his skills that helped him defeat Kyuboden Noriyuki. But when it comes to bragging, who can't say a few words? Although Bai Sui did not drink, he also talked about mountains with Kyuboden Noriyuki. I tell you, I practiced sword, not knife. I can't tell you how to practice knife, but I can tell you about sword practice. Sword, when you first learn it, there is no sword in your hand, and there is no sword in your heart. The sword is just a tool used purely for attack. When you learn to a certain level, the sword in your hand is no longer a sword, but there is still no feeling of sword in your heart. When you reach perfection, the sword in your hand is flying, and the sword in your heart is dancing. What you understand in your heart is completely connected and integrated with the moves in your hand. When the sword moves, the heart moves, and when the heart stops, the sword stops. It feels great. This level of realm emphasizes the unity of man and sword. The sword is man, and man is sword. Even an inch of grass in your hand is a sharp weapon. At this point, you have reached the top of the sword in the mortal world, and going further up is already the realm of Tao. Kendo means that there is a sword in the heart but not on the hand. It doesn't matter whether there is a sword in the hand, whether the sword is good or bad, or whether it is useful or not. Any dry grass or branches can become a sword. This level of realm requires that there is no sword in the hand, but the sword is in the heart. Although you are unarmed, you can kill the enemy with sword energy 100 steps away. Anyway, it was just bragging, and Bai Sui just said it casually. After all, if you say these words are wrong, they are actually not wrong, but if you say they are right, Bai Sui has never confirmed it anyway. As for whether it is true or not, whether it can be done, this is not what Bai Sui knows, and it is not the most important thing now. The most important thing is that the samurai from the Iron Country in front of him has been completely stunned. It's not that Kyuboden Noriyuki has never heard similar words, but because of the person in front of him. The person in front of him is a strong man who easily defeated him. There is no need to say nonsense to him. I think his previous realm is too different and he has never had a deep understanding. Now when he hears it again, it is like a revelation. Bai Sui didn't care about that. He just told her what he knew in his previous life, some things that were not too outrageous. I also said that I don't know much about the practice of swords, but I have heard of a saying. You can refer to it? Kuboda Jixing's eyes lit up when he heard that. He felt that those were all Bai Sui's humble words. Now he was guiding his future practice. Please don't hesitate to teach me, Bai Sui said. Let me make it clear that this is what I heard. I heard that there are several realms. One is a swordsman who simply swings a sword. Through unremitting training, thousands of times of swinging a sword, the swinging of the sword is imprinted in his body, but this kind of person can only be an ordinary swordsman in the end. Going up is to develop other powers beyond this. After all, the human body has its limits, and chakra is derived from the combination of physical energy and spiritual energy. Even if you are not from those ninja clans, you can actually cultivate chakra, but you may not have their innate advantages and cannot compare in quantity. However, if you just attach chakra to the sword, you can also cut through ninjutsu. Similarly, a sword that has been infected by chakra for a long time will also benefit from it. Of course, the chakra I mentioned is only one of many energies, and there are more than one kind of extraordinary power in this world, and these are all means to enhance strength. Going up, there is the realm of cutting iron, in which the swordsman can cut steel with the sword in his hand, and basically cut off the opponent's weapon at the first moment of fighting, so as to easily win. And the last level is to go one step further on the basis of cutting iron. Nothing can be cut, and even the world can be cut open with one sword. Of course, I emphasize again that I have heard of these, and I have never seen them. Kashiwa Sui changed the swordsmanship in one piece that he had seen in his previous life and set it out, and in Kashiwa Sui's view, domineering is also a kind of energy, so he replaced it with chakra. When Kubota Kayuki heard Kashiwa Sui emphasizing, he thought that Kashiwa Sui wanted him not to feel pressured. After all, people like him would never have the opportunity to touch such a great way to the sky. And there are some sayings about cutting iron. Kubota Kayuki felt that he had heard it before, although not completely the same, but Kashiwa Sui said more details, which obviously showed that these were all true teachings. Knowing that Kashiwa Sui did not want to make him grateful to him, Kubota Kayuki did not make it public, but kept this favor in his heart. One day later, Kashiwa Sui suddenly found that in the outpost of the village, Kubota Kayuki was teaching several children to exercise. Yes, now Kashiwa Sui no longer teaches children to study. After all, it has been 5 years since Kashiwa Sui came to the village, and those children who have already learned to read have begun to work with adults one after another. In addition to a child named Awai Koji, because of his clever hands and feet, he was kept by Kashiwa Sui to teach medical skills and teach the children who came later to read. The village has also developed to a certain extent in the past 5 years. Thanks to Kashiwa Sui's medical skills, no one in the village has died of injuries and illnesses, but the war outside has never stopped. During this period, the intensity of the war in the land of fields, which is adjacent to the land of iron, has further intensified, resulting in more villages being destroyed by the war and more people being displaced. Some of those who were preparing to flee to the land of iron discovered the location of the village and joined it. In the past 5 years, a total of 7 families and 32 people have come to the village, which can be regarded as a lot of expansion of the village. Those who have come into contact with other doctors were immediately shocked by Kashiwa Sui's skills. And through their family's performance, Kashiwa Sui has correspondingly restrained the effect a little bit, and tried to extend the treatment time a little bit longer. However, Kashiwa Sui wanted to avoid trouble, but someone didn't want him to stay in the village so easily. Several small ninja clans in the land of fields were easily defeated by a ninja clan in the land of fire in the previous war. The overall losses were serious, and a large number of people died in the post-war rescue. This made them pay attention to the doctors in Shianguo. After asking the daimyo of Shianguo for several doctors, they found that the treatment effect was very poor, not as good as the recovery effect of those ninjas who relied on their own chakra. They could only do some bandaging and suturing of wounds, which these ninjas could do themselves. So a servant in the daimyo of Shianguo told them about Kashiwa Sui. Chapter 23 Disaster is coming. However, it was just a rumor after all, and the specific situation was not something that the servant could know. This aroused the interest of the daimyo of Shinsakuni, who had nothing to do on weekdays, so he arranged for people to go down and look for information related to Bai Sui. Finally, he found a traveling merchant who had been to the village and learned some information about Bai Sui. Daimyo, what I said is true. That person is simply a godlike method. I saw it with my own eyes. A person's arm was cut open for such a long time, but it was completely healed in less than 3 days. The traveling merchant who was lying at the feet of the daimyo of Cheyenne's Hikuni trembled and described the magic of Bai Sui. Even if it was inconsistent with what he saw, he was eager to get away at the moment and could only exaggerate as much as possible. After all, only in this way can he attract the attention of the person in front of him, so that he who has been to the village will be useful. After all, when the guards of the daimyo's mansion found him, they also discovered that he was doing some illegal business. After all, if they didn't sell something profitable, there was no need for them to travel across mountains and rivers to be merchants. Selling salt and iron to those mountain refugees was a serious crime. After all, the daimyo naturally didn't want the number of civilians under his rule to decrease, otherwise the taxes he could collect would be greatly reduced. Especially in recent years, because of the war, the taxes he could collect have been reduced by 30%. If it weren't for the joint request of the daimyo of the 5 major countries, he would have wanted to get Shianguo out of the war. This damn group of lowly people, Shianguo daimyo immediately extracted what he wanted from the other party's words. Daimyo of Cheyenne's Higuo pointed at the peddler lying prone and said to the guards around him, "Send someone to follow him, find the untouchables hiding in the mountains, and capture them all as slaves. If the doctor is really as he said, I can still give him a chance to work for me. Go, the sooner you go, the sooner you can come back." Daimyo of Cheyenne's Higuo waved his sleeves and, with the support of his servants, he went to his bedroom. Only a few guards and the peddler whose clothes were soaked with sweat were left at the scene. "Humph, why don't you get out of here quickly? You dare to sell things to those untouchables privately. It's only because of the daimyo's kindness, otherwise your whole family would have become slaves now." One of the guards was dissatisfied with the fact that he had to walk in the mountains and forests, and kicked the peddler. The other party kicked the merchant directly on the forearm. He was in pain but dared not express it. Yes, samurai sir, I will get up right away, I will get up right away." The merchant forced himself to get up and saluted the guards present. "My lords, it is still about a day's journey from there to the capital. May I ask whether we should set off today or..." Before he could finish, the guards rudely interrupted the merchant. "Get lost, you want to delay the order of the daimyo? You are really a damned lowly person, lead the way. We are not bothered by it, how dare you have any objections?" After saying that, he kicked the merchant again. So the 4 guards pushed the merchant on the road. The depressed merchant wanted to report to his family, but he was glared at by the guards around him and did not even dare to mention it. In addition to the 5 of them, there was also a team of foot soldiers following behind. Their main task was not to fight, and they did not think that a small mountain village would dare to resist the will of the daimyo. Their main task was to prevent people from escaping in panic. After all, once they become savages, once they are caught by the daimyo, what will happen to them afterwards? It can be said that all civilians know very well. Such a tragic end, although it also led to few people daring to escape from the jurisdiction and become savages, but at the same time, it also made those savages who have escaped from the jurisdiction more alert. After all, everyone knows the consequences of being caught. As for why the villagers let the vagrants leave under such circumstances, it was also a helpless move. After all, there are always many necessities that cannot be obtained in a small village, such as salt, iron, etc., and this must rely on vagrants. And because vagrants will bring some rare items to the daimyo and pay a lot of taxes, even if they know that they are not so honest, they will not pay too much attention unless it is too much. This disaster can be said to be entirely because this vagrant did not control his mouth. After all, if the king is not discreet, he will lose his ministers. If the ministers are not discreet, they will lose their bodies, and if they are not discreet in a few things, they will become harm. Like him, he dared to use what happened during his illegal business as a so-called topic of conversation. Even if he was not discovered this time, it would attract the attention of the daimyo and other nobles because of other things in the long run. In the quiet little village, everyone didn't know what was going to happen. Ho-ha, Shoya, you're doing well, you have the style I had back then, not bad. Kubo Noriyuki praised a young man who was practicing with him. In recent years, as the population of the village has gradually increased, Kubo Noriyuki has gradually popularized the samurai training methods among young people, and there are 2 people who are practicing in a good manner. In order to prevent the 2 from getting injured during the competition, Kubo Noriyuki simply let the 2 practice outside Kashiwasa's yard. Over time, it has become a form of entertainment in the village, and the villagers who have free time will come here to watch. And the 2 people were the audience, In order not to embarrass themselves in front of everyone, also put all their efforts into each other. Although they were practicing outside the yard, Kashiwasu didn't pay much attention to it. After all, no matter how interesting it is, you can't watch it all the time, your aesthetics will get tired, and Kashiwasu is not like those villagers who only have this one entertainment to watch. Bai Sui has not made paper in the village in recent years. Although he has relevant knowledge in his memory of his previous life, it is actually very cumbersome. In addition, Bai Sui uses very little and does not need to make toilet paper to wipe his butt, so he uses another method. Use the key sword to slice bamboo or wood into translucent slices like cicada wings. Stack a few pieces together and use them as paper. Although the performance in all aspects is not particularly good, it is fine as long as it can be used, and Bai Sui is not picky. Bai Sui, who was writing in the room, suddenly knocked over the pen holder with his sleeve. Looking at the bamboo pen holder that rolled on the ground for several circles, Bai Sui was a little confused. Just thinking about how he was so careless and could make such a mistake, he felt his heart suddenly twitch, and a feeling of palpitations arose. Knowing that something was wrong, Bai Sui ignored the pens scattered on the ground and the half-written paper on the table. He quickly meditated on the futon, and immersed his consciousness in the danshin. As Bai Sui's consciousness was restrained, pictures gradually emerged in the inner scene. Although I couldn't see the faces of the people clearly, I was able to get a lot of information from them. Chapter 24, Fighting Back. Bai Sui knew that this was his own soul warning him, projecting some information that would affect him into his inner view. In the past, Bai Sui would also obtain some insignificant information in his inner view, but this time it came so abruptly. This shows that it will have a great impact on Bai Sui. Although Bai Sui does not know what it is, he can also feel the urgency. Although these people cannot see their appearance clearly, judging from their clothing and actions, they are led by 4 upper-class samurai, followed by many lower-class samurai. This kind of attire and action does not match the style of the Iron Country mentioned by Kubota Kayuki, so it is very likely that they are noble guards from the Land Country, the Fire Country, the Hot Spring Country, or even the Mountain Country. Well, although the national imprints on them cannot be seen clearly, from the perspective of distance and conflict, the most likely possibility is the Land Country. Especially since there seems to be a guide being carried inside, the possibility of the Land Country or being related to the Land Country is higher. Bai Sui thought about it again, but couldn't figure out what their purpose would be even if they came here, so he went out and found Kubota Kayuki, who was watching over the 2 disciples sparring. What do you think? If a daimyo or noble discovered the location of the village, what would they do? Bai Sui looked into the other person's eyes, paying attention to the other person's expression. Hearing this, Kubota Kayuki frowned. Why? Did you discover something? Them? Of course they will capture everyone who is not under their control as slaves. After all, the village will not pay taxes to them. The other party's words immediately made Bai Sui understand the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that he had a generation gap with the people of this world. No one in the Uzumaki clan would tell them these things, and although the villagers who fled here would be worried, they would not tell them. After all, that would only cause people more trouble. Bai Sui thought for a while and said, yes, I just had a feeling in my heart. I felt that there would be a group of people, under the guidance of probably a traveling merchant, heading towards the village. I think they will find the village soon. What? Felt it? Is that what you said before? One leaf can tell the coming of autumn. Kubota Kayuki was more concerned about another point. Bai Sui did not explain too much, just nodded to acknowledge it, and emphasized, in my opinion, this matter is very serious, so we must find a way to solve it. Kubota Noriyuki did not refute this. If they find our location, we can only run. After all, even if we kill this team of people, we have no possibility of competing with the angry national army. Bai Sui frowned and thought, feeling that something was overlooked. No, it shouldn't have come to this. There must be a turning point. What is it? Those people. Bai Sui once again examined the invading people in his mind, and suddenly remembered the guide inside. Yes, they don't know the location of the village, but were led here by the traveling merchant. If we can get rid of them on their way, far away from the village, perhaps we can eliminate this disaster. The more Bai Sui thought about it, the more he thought it made sense. However, Kubota Kayuki was helpless. But we don't know where they came from. Even if we want to kill them in advance, we can't find them. If we just kill them nearby, as long as the enemy's large forces search nearby, They will always find us." Bai Sui said nothing, turned back to the house, and took a sack from the shelf beside him. It turned out that there was a small bag of coins inside. Bai Sui took out 6 copper coins from it, came to the table, and prayed devoutly to the sky, praying for guidance from the sky. Wrapping his hands with qi, he threw the copper coins in his hands on the table. Yin, yang, 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 yin, yin, thunder and wind are constant. Zhen is the east and Sun is the southeast. They should be in the southeast of the village. Bai Sui simply asked the direction with the money lesson, and prepared to pack up and set off. As soon as he went out, he saw the village chief Kase, who came hurriedly. It turned out that Kubota Kayuki had asked his 2 disciples to inform the village chief. After all, this is a major event that determines the fate of the village, although the way he learned about it is a bit weird. Kawada Noriyuki was telling the village chief what happened. Although he still didn't quite believe that he could know such a far-away thing in the village, it was better to believe it than not. Kase was also very decisive. When he learned that Kashiwasu already knew the other party's location, he didn't go into the details, but asked whether he should take Murai and the others with him. After all, those hunters still had some combat power, and there was strength in numbers. Kashiwasu thought about it and refused. After all, ordinary people were too slow to move, and this matter was really urgent and could not be delayed. The reason why he wanted to take Kawada Noriyuki with him was because Kashiwasu wanted him to deal with the body and give some professional advice. Kashiwasu put on the sword and led Kawada Noriyuki to run in the southeast direction. Kashiwasu was walking all the way, not running, but Kawada Noriyuki felt that it was getting more and more difficult for him to catch up. Only by running at full speed could he barely catch up with Kashiwasu's pace. However, what Kubota Kayuki didn't know was that Kashiwasu had slowed down because he found it too difficult to catch up. The 2 of them were not slow at all. After less than an hour's journey, they saw the team from a distance. When he saw the team, Kubota Kayuki's eyes changed when he looked at Kashiwasu, as if the person standing here was no longer the doctor of the small village, but an omniscient god. When Kashiwasu saw the group of people, he focused all his attention on them. He didn't know that Kubota Kayuki was abnormal. Kashiwasu tried his best to use his hearing and vision to get some information about the other party. The 2 sides were about 100 meters apart. Ordinary people might not be able to do it, but Kashiwasu could barely do it now. Well, not bad, village, back, and, however, Kashiwasu could only barely hear it and couldn't hear it clearly, so he moved forward a distance secretly. According to the other party's lip shape, Kashiwasu was finally able to understand what the other party said. One of the warriors kicked the guide and said, "Hurry up." Then he turned to his companion and said, "I didn't expect to have an unexpected gain on this trip. This village is quite convenient. Let's take another road when we go back." His companion also smiled. "That's right, ha ha ha. I hope they can be as considerate as this village. He he, our journey is not short. It's not a big deal to stay on the road for one more day. Ha ha ha." Chapter 25, Blame. Bai Sui had a plan in mind, and turned back to find Kubota Jixing. "Are there any mountain bandits around here? Or famous roving robbers? It would be best if there are some marks that can be imitated, so that the matter can be framed." Kubota Jixing thought for a while. "I really don't know what is here in Xiango. I just know that there are a few famous robbers in Tigao. I thought of a group of bandits in the south of Tigao who committed a lot of crimes in Tigao at that time. Before I left, I heard that they had killed 4 or 5 teams of samurai who went to clear them out. The key is that they are bandits, often active in a large area, and after killing people, they like to string people's heads together with knives and stand next to the corpses. I originally studied them for a while and wanted to wipe them out, but I didn't expect that they were attacked by ninjas and came to the village. Although I don't know if they have survived until now, I can borrow their names. After all, they had hundreds of men at the time. Even if they were wiped out, it is reasonable for some people to escape." Bai Sui nodded after listening. "Okay, then I'll deal with them, and then I'll trouble you to arrange the scene." Since the plan has been made, Bai Sui did not delay any longer, and waited in front of them with a sword. The 4 warriors soon found Bai Sui and made a gesture to the light-foot soldiers under their command, indicating that they should press forward and surround them. "Hey! We are warriors from the Daimyofu. Anyone who dares to block the road will be killed without mercy. Get out of my way." Bai Sui did not take action directly, but wanted to get closer to prevent anyone from escaping, so he moved to the side of the road and made way. Seeing that the crowd was getting closer and closer, the 4 warriors were less than 10 meters away from Bai Sui, and the farthest one of the 12 Lightfoot soldiers was only 15 meters away from Bai Sui. Bai Sui moved, drew the sword from his back, and rushed towards the 4 people, who actually never relaxed. Haha, you really have a problem, you are looking for death, kill. Bai Sui rushed forward and swept with a sword. The sword filled with a golden key directly cut off the nearest samurai sword, and swept the opponent's torso without slowing down. The 4 people were also the elite of the Daimyofu, and they had cooperated well for many years. At this moment, seeing that someone was about to be killed, the other 3 people hurriedly chopped at Bai Sui, trying to force Bai Sui to put away his sword and save himself. However, Bai Sui was waiting for them. Seeing that the 3 people rushed to chop with their swords in order to save people, Bai Sui opened his lips slightly, and 3 golden lights flew out of his mouth and rushed straight to the faces of the 3 people. The 3 key swords attacked at an extremely fast speed. Before the 3 people could react, they were directly pierced through the forehead by the golden light. Without the obstruction of these 3 people, Bai Sui's sword also chopped directly on the samurai. Since the first time they engaged in the battle, all 4 samurai were dead. Bai Sui did not stop, swept past the 4 people, and rushed towards the Lightfoot behind them. The Lightfoot behind them were originally watching the samurai take action, and they were all shouting excitedly, ready to shout in protest to the adults. However, in just a blink of an eye, the 4 adults fell to the ground. The man who dared to raise his knife to them was not killed by the adults, but rushed towards them. Everyone did not react for a while. The gap was too big. Only the few people at the back were still shouting because they were far away and did not see what was happening in front of them. This awakened many Lightfoot soldiers. Some turned around and ran, and some wanted to draw their swords to fight with Bai Sui. But the 3 air swords had not dissipated before. Without waiting for the sword in Bai Sui's hand to come in handy, he killed the 12 Lightfoot soldiers with the 3 air swords, leaving the merchant who was almost fainted and slumped on the ground. The reason why he did not run away was because he knew who the person in front of him was. He was the miracle doctor he was going to lead the team to find. He knew that he was dead. Whether the man in front of him wanted to kill him or not, the result had been decided, because he led the way to catch people. Now those warriors are dead, and only he is still alive. No matter what the reason is, the daimyo will not let him go. What's more, the person in front of him was obviously here to silence them. Although he didn't know how they knew they were here, he obviously wouldn't let him go easily. Bai Sui didn't want to let him go. He picked him up from the ground. With their eyes fixed on each other, Bai Sui stabbed his mental power into the other's mind. Bai Sui had never used this method since Jinho was condensed. He only saw relevant information in his previous life's memory. This was the first time Bai Sui used it in this world. Although he was not very skilled in using it, Bai Sui's mental power was much stronger than the other party. He was unstoppable all the way and reached the depths of the other party's memory. After simply and roughly reading the other party's related memories, Bai Sui threw the businessman who had died because his brain was crushed to the ground. At this moment, Kubota Kayuki, who rushed here after Bai Sui took action, finally ran to Bai Sui's side. Along the way, he saw Bai Sui swinging his knife and saw 3 golden lights killing people like cutting vegetables. At this moment, he felt that he understood what Bai Sui said about kendo practice and the path he would take next. Then, without much talk, they quietly began to clean up the scene and fake the traces. About half an hour later, after the professional disguise of Kubota Kayuki, the scene looked like dozens of people from both sides had fought a battle in a different field. In order to make it more realistic, all the property, armor and weapons of the other side were seized. The 2 of them finally walked around the field and checked again, confirming that there were no mistakes that could be imagined, and then walked towards the village with their spoils. After all this trouble, when they returned to the village, the sun was about to set. Facing the last afterglow of the sunset, the village chief who had been waiting at the entrance of the village was relieved. In order not to cause panic, the village chief simply said that the 2 had something to go out. Although it was strange, no one asked much. But now, looking at the bloodstains on the 2 people's bodies that had dried and turned black, the villagers were also not calm. As the 2 approached, the smell of blood also penetrated into everyone's nostrils. Bai Sui left Kubota Noriyuki to explain to the villagers, and went back to wash up. At this moment, Kubota Noriyuki worshipped Bai Sui like a god, so he was willing to explain to the villagers. Although it was just a brief description, the villagers knew that a catastrophe had been averted by the two of them. The village chief saw that Kuboden Noriyuki looked tired, so he didn't let everyone continue to disturb him, and asked everyone to go back and rest, and talk about the matter in detail tomorrow morning. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.